Hello and welcome to this double-packed edition of this week's Talking TV with my mum, the weekly Geek-Dom podcast where we chat about various geek TV shows and we do a review roundup and a discussion on all of the various programs that we're watching. So as I said, it's a bit of a double one because we did have plans to have a podcast out last week, but that didn't quite work out and I'll explain why in a moment. But the usual housekeeping at the top of the show. Thank you very much for joining us. If you can hit that thumbs up button and leave us a like if you enjoy this podcast, let us know, that you enjoy what we do. And also leave us comments down below so that we can see and read your thoughts. And if you have any questions or anything or feedback based on the programs we talk about, your opinions and things, we love to hear them. And we always respond and also we'll give you shout outs and things on the show. And subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, then please hit that subscribe button, click the bell so that you're kept notified of whenever I upload, so that you can follow the videos that I put out and the podcast that we do every week normally, and help grow this Geek-Dom into a bigger and better thing. That would be fantastic. Then also, if you go into the description box, there are the timestamps for today's episode, so that you can keep track of where everything is and where everything comes in the recording. And also the link there to my Twitter, so you can come and follow me on there, and my donation medium. So if you feel kind and generous enough to want to help support the podcast and the future of the channel and help the growth in order to allow me to get more equipment and do bigger and better things, then there are two ways in which you can do so. You're not under any obligation, but that would be fantastic if you were nice enough to do that. So that's all the little bits of housekeeping out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and welcome my co-host. So hello there, Mum. Are you there?
Hello, Dom. Yes, I'm here.
Good.
I am
excellent.
here. After seeing you, I'm here now.
Yes. So let's explain then what I meant. So basically, on the last podcast, you will remember that towards the end, Mum said, are we going to let people know about our other surprise thing? And I said, no. What that was supposed to be was that Mum actually came to visit me this week just gone, and we were going to record the podcast for the very first time ever in the same room, because normally, for those of you that don't realize, Mum's at one end of the country and I'm at the other, so we do this online and then obviously I put it all together afterwards. She was here and we were going to record it together, but unfortunately things just didn't work out. We had technical issues left, right and center. The various things that I was trying to use to get both of our microphones and things just wasn't working properly. It was just all a big mess and we wasted so much time. And then it turned out that we weren't going to have enough time to get it all recorded. Hence the reason why I put the notification out on Twitter just to say, there isn't going to be a podcast this week because of technical issues. And that's why we're doing everything together in this one. So in this week's episode, we're going to do 2 Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead, 2 episodes of American Horror Story, which is now in the rotation, and 2 episodes of Preacher, so that we'll catch everything up and we'll be back up to speed with where we should be. So yeah, it was a bit of a pain, wasn't it, Mum?
Yeah, it was going to be from the Geek Cave and everything, so
Yeah,
never mind.
we were so excited. We had everything ready, we were all set up. You brought all your notes with you, and we were going to sit there and we were going to take a leaf out of like the likes of Skippy and Plastered Koala's book and have a beer while we were doing it and stuff like that. And it just did not go according to plan.
Didn't happen, no.
So that sucks.
You had to wait till I travelled all the way back home before we could do it.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so we've gone back to our usual setup now. But there we go.
Never mind.
Hopefully in the future we'll have worked out the technical kinks, and if we get that opportunity again, then we'll do it.
Yep.
But yes, anyway,
Indeed.
we will crack on because we have a lot to cover. So first things first, we'll just jump into the, I just got a brief bit of news, so I'll just cover that quickly. Firstly, the more news to do with the crossover, the Arrowverse crossover, Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is now they've added Tom Welling, and I can't remember the actress's name, but the actor and actress that played Clark Kent and Lois Lane in Smallville have both been added to this. So they're going to have a Smallville element to this crossover as well. And it's interesting because both of them have been in the shows before, because Tom Welling was in Supergirl as the bad guy? I'm trying to remember which one of the shows he was in now.
Was he a bad Superman?
No, he
No.
wasn't a super anything. He was a normal man. He was a. Oh, he was the. No, it was Tom Welling was in Lucifer, and he was the he was Cain.
Oh yeah, Cain, of
Yeah,
course.
when they did the Cain and Abel thing.
Yeah, Cain and Abel story. Yeah.
He came in as the new chief of police. Yeah, I knew it was something to do with police, and it was something to do with comic books.
Ah, of course, yes.
And he wanted, obviously, the whole thing with Lucifer, and he wanted Lucifer to kill him because he couldn't die, and all of this kind of stuff.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's him, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, he was Clark Kent in Smallville, and he's coming into this as Clark Kent from Smallville, and the woman. Now she was in it before. She played Kara's mum. So in Supergirl, Kara's mother is played by the actress that was Lois Lane in the Smallville TV show. So she's already been in it, and so she's going to be now playing her Lois Lane character. So that's interesting. Okay. I've also heard a rumor that there's potentially going to be it's either happening or they want it to happen. You know, obviously Helen Slater is in Supergirl as her mum, yeah?
Yes.
And obviously Helen Slater was Supergirl in the movie in the 80s. Yes. She might be getting into the suit and being Supergirl again as well.
Oh, wow.
Because then it'll be that thing of like on another version of Earth, she still is Supergirl, just like she was back in the film in the 80s. So, yeah, that'll be quite cool if that comes to pass. The other thing related to the Arrowverse is that with Arrow ending, they had mentioned that, you know, they had some other shows lined up and some other things that they were going to continue growing the Arrowverse. And it seems now we know where some of the Arrow characters are going to end up because they're going to be doing a Canaries show.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to get Laurel, Dinah, Oliver and Felicity's daughter, and potentially a few other characters are all going to be in this show called Canaries. Oh. So it's going to follow them like as a crime-fighting team. I presume as well it's going to be in the future. It's going to be in the flash forward because if the daughter's in it... Yeah,
because that's to do with the connection that we had in the actual Arrow, wasn't it? With them and saving the Canaries, wasn't it?
Yeah, when Laurel showed up in the future and she met up with Mia, didn't she? And she said about the Canary Network and all of this kind of stuff. So they're obviously taking that and they're going to run with it going forward. But yeah, so they're doing a
spin-off.
Yeah, so they're doing a Canary show. So that's something. Okay. And the other thing, this is not related to our TV shows, but is within the realms of Geek-Dom, is Jurassic Park. So they're doing the third Jurassic World movie, which was always the plan. You know, it was always planned to be a trilogy. So you had Jurassic World, and then you had the second one, the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, and they're now starting work, or they have started work on the third Jurassic World movie. Don't know what the subtitle of it is yet, but it's been confirmed that Laura Dern, Sam Neill, and Jeff Goldblum are all returning for this one.
Oh, wow. Yay.
So although we had, like, Jeff Goldblum showed up in the last one a little bit, there was a little kind of cameo, but this is the first time the three of them, the original trio from the original Jurassic Park movies, are all coming back together as part of the new franchise, the new version of it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, so not TV show related, but in the world of like geeky stuff, you know.
Yes.
Cool. So yes, that's pretty much it. It's been. Oh no, there was one other thing. You remember I told you a little while ago there was going to be a Ghost Rider TV show?
Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't look like that's happening now.
Oh, okay.
Apparently, it was going to cost too much money to make because of the special effects and stuff, so it's now been cancelled. But there's a chance that it could happen in the future on the Disney Plus service instead, rather than being on like regular television.
Oh.
Because they've got a bigger budget for the Disney Plus stuff. Because Hulu is owned by Disney, and that's what things like Runaways and Cloak and Dagger and things like that are on, as far as I know. So some of the Marvel Disney shows are on that platform already, but they obviously don't do the big budget things, which is what they're going to be doing on Disney Plus. So Ghost Rider could live again on there, but for the time being, it's dead in the water. So that sucks a little bit, but there we go.
Oh well.
But yeah, it is what it is. So anyway, that's that. So that's all the news I have. And now I'm going to give you the comments. So these are the comments from the last podcast we did. So this was our 26th episode a couple of weeks ago. So firstly, we had Zoe left a comment. and she agreed with me, and also obviously you were in agreement at the time about Buffy, and she said, yeah, Buffy all the way. So she was really happy about that. And I think I told you separately, like, yeah, I told you in conversation about the fact that when she was listening to that podcast, and when I mentioned about Mark Hamill going to be part of the crossover as potentially the Joker, and then also when I said about Buffy was like, you know, one of my favorite things from the 90s, she was very excited to the point that she made a noise and scared a couple of the other people working in the like stock room with her.
Yeah.
So that was quite funny. But yeah, she said it was an awesome podcast and it was great to listen to at work.
Cool.
Captain 23rd Gaming, who's somebody that recently has subscribed to the channel and stuff, and he's got a reasonable sized YouTube channel himself, been going for a little while, and he listened to the podcast and said, I'm not going to lie with you guys, but this was actually a pretty good podcast, and it's been a good minute since I last sat in on one. So yeah, the last time, he hasn't listened to any podcast for a while, but he was actually pretty impressed with our one. So that's quite nice from somebody new coming in and saying, yep, I really enjoyed this. So thank you very much for that. Okay, so Azura. So Azuru play. I always say Azura. Azuru plays. I know why that is. I know what it is, and I'll say this to Emma directly. There was a game on the Xbox 360 called Ashura's Wrath, and it's spelt kind of similar to what your YouTube name is. So every time I read your name, my mind
read it wrong.
Yeah, my mind interprets it as that. So apologies, Emma. So Emma wrote, whoa, a 2-hour-long podcast. How great is that? Looks like my work commute is going to be great fun.
Oh, good.
And she said, I haven't had a chance to watch a lot of the shows lately because work has been swamping me. So it's nice to keep my list growing with your suggestions.
Cool.
So that was pretty cool.
Keep up to date with the programs, even if you can't get to see them.
Yeah. And my buddy Jesse, your local anti-hero, said, strongly becoming my favorite podcast, considering I don't listen to other podcasts, but still. Wonderful as always. And I said, that needs to be a quote, strongly becoming my favorite podcast, considering I don't listen to others. And he commented on the whole thing with the Stranger Things thing. And he said, I knew Susie was real the whole time. Dustin deserves a girlfriend. And I said, I always hope she would be as well. Yeah, he does. Best character for sure. So, thank you very much, Jesse. So, yeah, and that's it. I know that Skippy has been snowed under with work and he's actually been away from home working and stuff. So he did let all of us within the our community and stuff know that he was not going to be on top of people's videos and things like that, and that he was going to have to do a catch-up session when he got back home again. So you'll notice that Skippy is conspicuous by his absence from this week's show, but hopefully he'll get back into a normal routine again, and we'll hear from him soon, because we're hoping to introduce his segment onto the show in the not too distant future as well. So yes, but leave us your comments and we will bring them up in the next show.
Yes.
Anything further to add?
Don't think so.
No? All right, let's get underway with the reviews then, shall we?
Aye.
So we will start with Fear the Walking Dead. And this was what number episode was this? The 14th episode? Yep. And it's called Today and Tomorrow. Take it away.
Take it away. Yeah, so basically we started this one with some more video footage, basically. Morgan was being videoed by Al again, and she was asking him a bit more about his wife and his son.
Yeah.
Basically, that's what it was, really, and they were still they still hadn't gone back to the others, because he wanted to carry on with, she said, we haven't got much fuel, and he was going, well, I want to keep dropping the boxes, even though, they were low on fuel, because he's avoiding going back.
Yeah.
I think because of the Grace thing. So they were loading up and they were getting some fuel for their car, and then they noticed somebody took one of the oil cans out of the back of the van. Yeah. And we saw some strange guy who they cornered him, and apparently he was also running from the horsemen, that woman they found in the shop.
It was very interesting that bit, wasn't it? Because where they were, it was like there was just it was like the road. There was loads of abandoned cars, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And
it's like a car park, wasn't it? There's cars in it. Because there's shops, wasn't there? So it's like a supermarket car park or something. So there's lots of cars.
And he was very wary of them, and they basically were trying to sort of say that they wanted to help and stuff. And he's like, yeah, that's what they said as well. and you're like, and then you start, it becomes clearer that he's talking about the Virginia and her people, and then it was then that they kind of, the timing was like around the same point in time that they then showed up, didn't they? At the top of they came over the ridge, like a bunch of them on horses. So it's like, oh, there they are.
They piled into a car, didn't they? They all piled in the car with this guy.
Yeah.
And she had the video camera so she could see where they were.
Yeah.
And then they realised that they'd left the lid off the gas can outside the car.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that was a tense moment where she was trying to reach out and get the can lid to get the door shut before he got any closer and heard her.
Yeah, because there was a guy weaving in
on a horse, wasn't it?
Yeah, of the cars closer and closer to where they were.
And he was that close. It was funny because the horse obviously was like breathing, which then misted up the window, which was lucky.
Yeah.
Because while he was so close to the car, where the horse was breathing, the whole car window got misted up, which was like, oh, whew.
And that
protected them a bit, didn't it?
He leaned forward, didn't he? I think he was going to wipe the window, and just before he had the chance to, one of the others shouted, "I think he went this way." So then he sort of quickly sat back up again and rode off to meet up with the rest of them, and it was like, wow, that was so close. He was like inches away from the window, just where he would have potentially seen them, and then they were saved at the last moment.
That was it's like, oh my days. So do you want to continue with Alan Morgan's ventures and then go? Because we only had a little snippet of something which we can marry up with the other bit on there.
We kind of got two separate stories mostly in this episode, didn't we? So we'll stick with them for now.
So then, obviously, we saw Al decided she wanted to record this Tom guy. That's what his name was.
Yeah.
And the story was about the horsemen, and obviously their mission. It isn't about today, but tomorrow. All they care about is the future, and that's what that woman that Al had met up with kept saying.
Yeah.
So she was like suspicious, thinking maybe she's part of this. Maybe that's where she went.
Yeah,
maybe she's part of this group. Yeah. So then he told them about the place they'd been staying at, and he said he thinks his sister's still there, and he had to go back and get them. So Al originally was going to she wanted Morgan not to come, didn't she? She said, I've got an eject, and he going, I'll take everything. And he says, it's not about a film, it's not about a video, is it? And she goes, no, it's not. And then obviously the camera, he goes, so it's not about a story at all. And she goes, no. But he followed her, didn't he? So they got to the place where Tom had told them, so they were filming it. It was like a big ranch, wasn't it?
Well, it was, so just a little bit of an extra detail there that you sort of skipped over. So Tom explained that when everything went to hell, there was him and a bunch of people, and they found this condo complex, is what it was. And there was all these houses, and I think they had they had like a stable area and swimming pool and stuff. And he said, we were trying to make it good, but certain things weren't working properly. And they were trying to do like a filtration system with the swimming pool and all of this lot. And then he said, and then Virginia and her people showed up, and they said they were there to help. And then they started going through the people that lived there and who was useful and who wasn't. And because he was in charge, because he said they'd had like a residence committee, and he had been voted to be in charge of the residence committee. But because they'd struggled with things, she then deemed him useless. She was basically like, well, the reason that you haven't succeeded here is because of you, Tom. It's all your fault, Tom. You are an inefficient leader. So he said they kicked me out. They basically booted me out, and they wanted to kill me because they saw that I had no use to them. And he said, that's the thing about these people. They say they're here to help you, but unless you've got something, unless you have a use for them, they'll see you as dead weight to try and get rid of. He said they're not, they try and make out they're so helpful and benevolent, but they're not. And then he said that's what happened, and that's why he left there. He got booted out, and then they threatened to kill him. So he was on the run from them. And he said, but he had to leave his sister behind, and he thought that she was still in there. So it was a condo complex. Yeah.
Al had noticed that what seemed to be the norm was they had walkers coming into the gate, and there was a guy inside the gate who would kill the walker, drag it inside the compound, and then when they came back on the horses, they didn't have to deal with these walkers. That was like the thing. So she was like trying to coax this walker to do what she wants, and then all of a sudden we heard this splat sound, and like Morgan had sort of crept up behind her and killed him. She goes, "Didn't want you to kill him.
Yeah.
I need him to move towards the gate so that I can get him. The guy's going to come and kill him and open the gate, and we can get in." It's like, oh, and he goes, "Why are you here anyway? Then why haven't you gone back to meet up with the others?" And so she had a little bit of a chat trying to find out why he didn't want to go back to the convoy, didn't she?
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really get much out of him over that, to be fair.
No.
But so anyway, so they managed to get a zombie to get to the gate. The guy opened the gate. They snuck in, and just as they got in, luckily they got in, and then a truck and horses came in as well, didn't they? They just got in, didn't they, in the gate, and then the cowboy people came back.
And when they were hiding, like you said, the truck came through, and then Morgan realised that's one of our trucks.
Yeah.
And then he started worrying, because then now this whole exile that he put himself through, he then starts feeling guilty, because he's like, what if something's happened and I wasn't there? You know, because Morgan has this little bit of a sort of hero / messiah sort of protector complex thing. So he then starts thinking, oh, because I chose to leave and not go back, you know, it's that you get that whole sense of like, if I was there, maybe I could have done something. We need to figure out what's happened. You know, we need to figure out what's happened to our people. How did they end up with one of our trucks? All of this kind of thing. So what started as an initial, we're going to try and help this Tom guy, and he's telling Al, try not to get too involved with everything that's going on here. We don't want to alert these people. He suddenly changed tack and was like, we need to get to the bottom of this. And he's like, I'm going to go and talk to them. And she's like, are you crazy? You can't just get up and go over to speak to them. You know, she's like, that's not going to work. And then she'd also explained a little bit, because he was very, very suspicious about what exactly is going on here, Al. And she said, I have a suspicion that this group of people may have a connection to somebody that I knew. And she was still vague. She never said, oh, yeah, you remember that time I went off, I met up. So she didn't tell him the specifics, but she said, someone that I knew might be here, and there might be a connection to that person. And she said, I need to try and establish if there's a link. And so they were both, you know, they were a bit honest there, that he was honest with the fact that, okay, I've been running away from stuff, and now I feel guilty because of this. And she's like, I'm really here, not just to help this Tom guy, but also to see if there's a connection, obviously, as we know, to this woman that she met several episodes back. So
yeah,
they then were like, look, we still need to be cautious. So they split up, didn't they?
Yeah, so she said she's going to look for whatever she was looking for, and Morgan said he's going to go look for the sister.
Yeah.
So we were sort of watching both of them sort of tentatively, like backwards and forwards a little bit. So Morgan went into the house, didn't he? And he could hear somebody. He could hear a walker, wasn't it, in a cupboard? I think it was.
Yeah.
And obviously, eventually, like he opened it, and obviously this thing was there, and he killed it. At first, I was thinking, oh no, sister's been turned into a zombie. But basically, I think the zombie got into her room at some point, so she locked it in there and got out herself, basically, didn't she?
It was, wasn't it like handcuffed or something? It was chained up in some way, and then he struggled with it, and obviously because he wasn't wanting to make noise and stuff, that all went a bit wrong, and the zombie like ended up going over. There was a balcony because he was up like on the next level, and it went over the balcony and like fell below. And then you're like, oh, okay, that's not good. It's fallen down.
No.
But that
meanwhile, we had Al. Yeah, that was the end. We thought, oh well, it's gone. And then we had Al found this room, and in this room there was the maps and the information that Ginny woman, I suppose, has got.
And lots of keys.
She was filming it all, wasn't she? Yeah, lots of keys, and she was filming it all. And I think that's when she went outside, wasn't it? She started going outside. She's still filming.
Yeah, she was watching. She was looking at all the stuff and filming it all, and like going, what is all of this? What's this map? And like the different places. I think they had things on them, didn't they? Didn't want like everything that had a piece of paper with a key attached, and it said like hotel, and it said, you know, or whatever it was, you know, whatever the.
It's almost like all the places they've taken over, basically, isn't it?
And so she was seeing all this, and then she's like, I'm not finding what I'm looking for. So she got out of there, and she's then creeping around trying to like, right, I need to meet back up with Morgan. And then what happened? The zombie that had fallen from the balcony,
fallen off,
lurched out at her and knocked her into the swimming pool.
Yeah. I went, oh no, a camera.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
And then you had this really
But the thing is,
tense moment.
struggle is
Yeah,
awful, wasn't it?
where she was fighting it under the water and she like tried to get away and she swam upwards and then it grabbed her leg and pulled her back down. And it was real struggle. And it's like, oh dear, this isn't good. This is really tense and stuff. And then in the background, you just see this commotion and then a figure approach it. And it was Morgan had dived in and he like stabbed the zombie through the head with his stick. And then they sort of swam to the surface and all the blood pooling out everywhere, just the whole swimming pool was. And so you're thinking, oh, that's going to be good for them now because they were using that water to drink from, but that's not going to happen anymore. Yeah. And then as they came up, they were sort of went, are you okay? And they looked at each other and then it sort of zoomed out. All these floodlights came on and there was Virginia and all her people stood at the end of the swimming pool. And she's like, oh no, y'all have made a bit of a mess there. And she's like, something, and she referred to them. She said Morgan and Al, didn't she? And she was like, pleased to meet you. I'm Virginia or something. You can call me Ginny. And they were like, oh no, this isn't good.
And did she not then tell them that, because they said, did they not say that's why they were there, about the girl? And she said, she's been long gone. She's gone. Yeah, because she said, you met Tom, didn't you? And they're like, yeah. And then she's like, oh, things didn't work out. It's a shame about Tom and stuff like that. And yeah, she explained that she wasn't there and that she said, I see you found her little trap that she set up. So it's obviously Janice, the sister, had set that up. That Walker was set up in her room, but she's obviously got out of there at some point. So then the whole thing was pointless, them going there, because there was nobody to save in the first place. Well, no, the only thing was good that she's found out all that information about them. Yeah. And then didn't she invite them in and she brought some jam or something, wasn't it? Yeah, I wondered what it was to begin with. I thought it was just like juice or something. She was like, said the flavours, and they're just both looking at her as if saying, no, thank you. And so then she cracked them open and started eating it with her fingers, and you're like, oh, it's jam. She started telling them a bit about what they're doing and what they're trying to do, and you're always welcome to be part of it and all this stuff. And they were saying, well, no, we've got to go back. Well, they were very. We don't know part of it, did they? They were very suspicious of her, and then Al basically asked her, do you have any, what do you have here and stuff? And she was saying, oh, this, that, and the other, and we're doing all right. We're rebuilding society. And she was saying a lot of the stuff, again, that sounded very similar to the helicopter people. And then Al outright asked her and said, you got any helicopters? And she laughed, and she was like, darling, we're only just starting to rebuild. She's like, we haven't got that far yet. And that's when you go, they're not connected. They're not connected. No, it's just coincidental that they've got a similar kind of mantra way of seeing things. So then Al realised, like, oh, okay, that's I was chasing something that wasn't there. So yeah, because she was trying to convince them to stay, and then they said they didn't want to. She said, well, you're free to go if you want to go. You're silly, really, but why go if you want to go? If you want to take your chances out there on your own, fine. And they gave them all their stuff back. Give all their stuff, the camera, the guns, and all that. And then she said, give Morgan his stick. She goes, oh, I got one of my guys to fix it for you. And she made it like it was. Yeah, because she said, didn't she? She said it was in a bit of poor shape. And she said, we've got a carpenter here. So I got him to take a look. And he's like, made it all perfect for you again. And it looked really good. And it fresh paint on it and stuff like that. And he's like, he felt it in his hand. He like weighed it and stuff. And he was like, thank you. And she's like, she said, like, so we're not your enemy. She said, why are we going to, we're not going to harm you. And she said, if you want to try and get, be out there on your own and sleep on a rock rather than in a comfy bed, then that's up to you. She said, but you know where we are. And she said, and you'll be seeing us because we're out there. So she said, go back, tell your friends, talk to them about it and decide what's best. And she said, but we're not going to make you do anything. And you're like, it's very interesting tactic she has. Where it's not like, if you don't join us, we'll kill you. It's like, if you don't join us, that's up to you. Because she's got this almost smug thing about her of like, you will join us eventually if you know what's good for you. And if you don't, then you'll just die out there sort of thing. Exactly. So they headed off back to the car. And then we had, because we do meet up with them again near the end. But we had, the other story that was going on was Grace and Daniel. They were out on their own. And we had this bit, they had the truck, and there's Grace trying to unscrew some solar panels off the roof, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But listening to Don Quixote on her headphones.
Yeah, that's right.
And obviously, she obviously realised that, oh, well, I know I was trying to be really clever, but we haven't got any room to put all this in there, have we? The lorry was already full.
Yeah.
And he said, he had the cat, and he said, so where are you going? He goes, oh, I'm going off to buy, there's a record shop over there. I'm going to go see what records I can find.
Yeah.
And so he went off, and when he came back, he was saying about all the different albums, music he had, and then they got a radio call to say about the oil fields. Because that was obviously the first time they knew about what had happened over there.
Yeah.
Yes, and then they thought, well, was it that when they decided, they realised their van wouldn't start, so they thought we'll have to find somewhere to stay, and then all these zombies appeared, didn't they? And they had to fight all these zombies, and his records got all smashed.
Yeah, so basically they overloaded the truck, and she was like, this is my fault, because the truck then wouldn't go. And she said, I tried to take everything. She said, I was a bit too optimistic in what we could take with us. And he's like, hey, you were just trying to do the best. You know, he's very sort of upbeat about it. Just like, hey, you know, we'll leave this here. We'll lock this up and we'll come back for it. You know, and he grabbed a few bits. Obviously, he grabbed skid mark and things. And then he said, we need to get somewhere soon because this one needs his food. And he was explaining to her about how skid mark kept him going and helped him when he was on his own, and that he never thought he'd come back to people again and stuff. But Skidmark was always there, and he said, so the least I can do for this cat, he said, as grumpy as he is make sure he gets his meals on time. And so we need to get to somewhere. So they're walking along the road, chatting away, and then a couple of straggly zombies came out of the bushes, and then they put the records down and stuff, and they're like, stop to take them out. But then lots more came, and it was like, oh, you shouldn't have stopped. And then Daniel got knocked over, and the box of records went flying. And then she was like, we need to go. And they ended up having to dump the stuff that they had apart from Skidmark. And they got out of there. And then all the zombies were marching after them, trampling all the records and things like that. And you're like, oh, no. And they eventually found, was it like a warehouse or no, it wasn't a warehouse. It was an abandoned.
It was a house.
It was like a pub, like a restaurant with a bar and stuff like that. So they hold up there, and they chatted a bit more about stuff, didn't they? About their.
He was saying about the reason he got the records was for Charlie, because obviously she likes the music, and that she changed everything for him because he was happy with Skidmark, and obviously the daughter dying.
Yeah.
She's changed his perspective. That's why he decided he wanted to join the group again. Whereas before he was just like a lonesome person, wasn't he?
Well, I suppose and then she started losing Ophelia, he felt he didn't really have anything anymore and he didn't belong anywhere anymore. But then obviously Charlie, in a way, it's almost like she's now become like a surrogate granddaughter to him.
Yeah.
And so
Grace was also telling him about how she had tried to help Morgan.
Yeah.
And then they spotted a guitar.
Because
that was good.
Yeah. And what that played into the point that he was saying, he was really upset about losing all the records because he wants to try and educate Charlie, and he said she likes this and she likes that, and he said I'm really disappointed because he said I really wanted to introduce her to the traveling Wilburys. And and then she's like, she looked over and she's like, maybe we still can. And she walked over and there was a stage, so she picked up this guitar and she was like, well, maybe, I might be able to do something here. And he's like, you know how to play that thing? And she's like, maybe I'm a little rusty. And she started sort of just tuning it up and tinkering with it a little bit. And then she said about singing, and Daniel was like, oh, I can't sing. And she's like, oh, don't be silly, I'm sure that you've got a great voice
they were
or
singing?
Something. It was, it was a traveling Wilbury song, and I can't remember the song now because it was like 2 weeks ago. I'd hope maybe you might have written it down.
Song.
Yeah, it's a known song we know, because when they started singing it, I was like, oh yeah, I recognize this. But that for me was one of my favorite moments.
I love that.
So good.
Yeah, Daniel singing.
Because she started singing the song, and then he was listening to it, and then he chimed in, and he was doing harmonies.
Yeah.
And it was like, he's got a really nice voice.
Yeah, it was great.
It was really lovely little scene of them two just singing, and they only did a little bit. They did just like a little bit of the song, and then they stopped, and that was, they sort of looked at each other and laughed and stuff. And it was like, what a nice moment, and what a revelation that, Daniel, Ruben Blades is actually a really good set. But then actually knowing that, I actually found out Ruben Blades has recorded albums and stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Mostly in America and South America and stuff. But yeah, he's actually done.
It was just cool having him singing.
Yeah, so it was a really
then we
cool
went
moment.
So we went back to Morgan and Co and Morgan, Alan, Tom back on the road again. And Al was telling Morgan a bit more about that woman, wasn't he? Her encounter. Because I said to you, see, that was relevant, that episode.
Yeah.
Keeps coming back to us. So it's also, if they hadn't had it, how was you going to talk about it? And Morgan was also saying he's also holding on to the past.
Yeah.
And he's thinking, no, I've got to just do something about this. And then he's trying to get, he thought, I'm going to radio Grace and see how she is and say what I have to say to her. So he's radioing her, and instead of her answering, Daniel answered.
Yeah.
And said that Grace has deteriorated.
He said it all happened really suddenly. He said all of us, 1 minute she was fine, and the next minute he said, I don't know what happened. He said, and she's really not in a good way and stuff like that. And then Morgan was like,
Morgan, he's like,
can I talk to her? And so Daniel held the radio to her and stuff, and he said, I'll get there as quick as I can. Where are you? And they were trying to explain what it was, a bar that they were in and all of this stuff and what had happened with the truck and everything. And he said, we'll get to you as quickly as we possibly can.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, no, she can't die before he sees her.
Before he tells her that how he feels about her.
Before he gets to tell her what and it's like ended like that. I thought, no. So I can't wait till next week now to see what happens.
So then we just go straight on to the next one. So next week's, which was the one we've just watched, episode 15 called Channel 5. And it kicked off with a propaganda documentary with Virginia doing her own version of what our heroes have been doing and doing her own video where she's talking about what they're trying to do and what they're trying to achieve out here. And she used some of the kind of terminology that the good guys use, but like in her own way. And she had the keys. And so the thing we saw with the keys, the thing we had with the keys, she explained like that's kind of almost like their symbol. And she said, if you see one of these, because she had a badge with the key on, which I'd never noticed before. I've not noticed in the last couple of episodes. So whether or not it wasn't there or whether we just didn't notice it. And she said, these key, if you see somebody with this or wearing one of these hats, she said, then you know it's part of our group. And she said, and we're here to help and all of this stuff. And you're like, And then it kind of zoomed out and you saw it was Al and Morgan and who was the other person that was there? There was 3 people stood there watching it on the TV.
Was it Tom?
No. It was one of the main group. It was like June or it was John or somebody. And then
it's one of them anyway.
Al like lost her temper and she like smashed the television. And they were all like,
any of that.
And what was really cool was then it sort of went into the opening credits. And because she'd smashed the television, what we got when we got the opening Fear the Walking Dead and the music, the screen was cracked. Like a television screen had been cracked. So it was like a cool little like thing that they did there.
And after that, when it went back into like the start of the program, we saw them all again and they were like updating their video. Because obviously they sent a video for Channel 4 and they wanted to like, no, we need to update it, what we've done so far, because she's doing this. We've got to make sure people know what's really going on, sort of thing.
And this for me, and I said this to you, because obviously we watched this one together, and I said, personally, I got a bit annoyed with a large majority of this episode. It got better as it like got to about halfway through, but the first half was a lot of this. Here's this person and they're talking to the camera, and now here's this person and they're talking to the camera, and now here's this person, and just carried on like that. And it was like them, like you said, them doing their documentary again, and them all talking about various things. And it was all this like the shaky cam and the blur out of focus, which I felt ages ago when they did that the first time. It was awesome because it was something different, and it's like, oh, this is really clever because not only are we getting the the television quality filming of the actual episode, but we're also getting this sort of in filming within the episode where they're using camcorders and handy cams and stuff. So we're getting, it's a slightly different quality, and that's really unique and really cool. But it was overused in this
They've done it too many times now.
Yeah, and I just got and I said to you at the time, I was just like, I was sat there just like very bored in this whole section. And so I can't even really go into specifics about what they were talking about, because I just kind of switched off, because I was just like, oh,
yeah,
this is so monotonous and so boring.
But on a good note, we've realised that Grace was still alive.
Yes, and they had got to her in time.
And Morgan got to her, and he felt really bad that he'd not been there.
Mm-hmm.
But he still didn't tell her. He still didn't tell her.
He still didn't tell her
how he felt.
No.
And then the new guy Tom said he was glad, because he do a bit of a video saying he was glad they found him.
And he was he was talking about what they're doing is so positive, and they're actually helping people, unlike Virginia's group. And he was sort of pointing out all the things, and he was like, we're going to record everything because we want you to see the truth, and we want you to see how real people do things and all of this kind of. And in the middle of his filming, his sister turned up. And it turns out she's the girl from the petrol station that Wes saved the other week. So that was really interesting connection of like this girl that they saved, that Wes got to and saved in the petrol station, that was going to kill herself, is actually Tom's sister. So it was like, that was a nice little connection.
How weird was that?
So they had a lovely reunion, didn't they?
Yeah. And also we had a bit more with Alicia and her painting, another video. And we had June, I think it was, because they said they were looking now for a settlement. They decided after that incident with the little girl the other week, they said, we need to find somewhere that we can actually settle.
Yeah.
We had Dan and Grace got the guitar and were trying to teach Charlie how to play it. That was quite funny.
Yeah.
And then they were just having a good old time, and then all of a sudden this walker came out of nowhere. They went, walker alert. They said, make sure they always say, make sure the children are inside or something, don't they? They don't know how many's going to come.
Yeah.
And the one they killed had a sheriff badge on.
And it was not a real sheriff's badge. It was for this place, and they picked it up, and it was the place that John used to work at, Humbug's Gulch.
Yes.
But not
and
the
he was
same
obviously
one.
saying that there was and he was obviously saying that, like he said, there were lots of them. He said maybe there's one nearby that we could. He said that'd be a good place to settle, wasn't it? And that was they think, we're going to go there then. Yeah,
because they were. Yeah, he was like, it wouldn't have wandered that far, so there must be one in this area somewhere
within reasonable reach. Yeah. So they thought, yay! So they're all getting all cracking, all excited, and then Grace collapsed.
Yeah.
I thought, oh no, she's going this time. And luckily, I thought this was awesome, because we saw them in the mall, and the time she didn't want to get the ultrasound and she didn't get it done. But Daniel had got the ultrasound machine, didn't he?
Yeah.
When they went back, when they went in to get everything, he said, I knew this might come in handy one day.
Yeah.
And because I was thinking, how did they get that? And then Daniel had obviously piped up that he had actually got it. And so obviously they were looking, but they didn't know what they were looking for, did they?
No.
They didn't know what was going on. Then they realised she needed lots of more water.
Well, yeah, because June obviously with her background in, being a nurse and stuff, but she's obviously never dealt with radiation poisoning. So she was like, I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. But she said about her throat was closing up, and the fact that she wouldn't survive long if they couldn't get any fluids into her.
Yeah.
And so then Morgan said something about a retirement home that they'd passed not long ago. And then he said, about how far back was it and stuff. And you're like, okay. They're gonna, because I remember you sort of were like, what did they say, or where are they going, or something? And I sort of said, oh well, I think they're gonna head back to this like old people's home and hopefully see if they can get their hands on like IVs and drips and things, because they probably have that kind of supplies there, in a care home. So that's just what they did. They set off on this little side mission to go and find, something that could help Grace.
Yeah, and they found the things, and that was close call, wasn't it? When it was Al, wasn't it? Because I found these things, and that's right, they're the ones you need. And then this walker came in and nearly got her.
Yeah, like knocked her to the ground and everything, and she was really struggling.
I thought, no.
And then Alicia came in and saved her.
Yeah. And said she's glad that now killing these things wasn't the only thing in her life, because obviously that was a lot. That was a lot. All she ever did, wasn't it? She literally was just manic, just wanted to kill. So that was pretty cool. So yeah, so they all set off to find the new life, new beginning.
They got the stuff back, obviously, to Grace, and then we saw her again, and she was okay because they'd hooked her up to this drip and stuff, and she was like conscious again and things like that. So that was all good. There was also the other little bit that with John and June talking about when they get to where they're going, that he said, I don't want to hang about. I don't want to take any more time. And he said, I want us to get married once we get there and we get settled. I want us to do this thing. And she's like, okay. And like, it will only be a small affair, a low key thing. And I remember you saying to me, at the time you were like, I don't think it will. It'll be like big party and all of this kind of stuff. It won't be a low-key thing at all, but it would be a good thing for them because of all the bad stuff they've been through, so it'll be a nice moment of celebration.
Just what they all need, basically, a wedding, and that's what I said, wasn't it?
So then they set off on their way.
They were going off with the trucks, and they got to the bridge, and there was a big section of it. They got some of them over, didn't they? Did they get some of the trucks over, and then the bridge started, like, collapsing? And then there was this noise, and I thought it was like a gunshot. And basically, it was like the wires, is it the wires that kept the bridge up?
Like metal wires.
Like they were breaking, weren't they? Because I thought somebody was shooting at them.
Yeah,
because obviously my first reaction was when Dwight got his gun out, I thought, oh no, what? And then that woman appeared, didn't she?
Yeah, they turned up
in a Jeep.
Car. Yeah, in a Jeep.
Making a comment about, this is horsepower, but a different type of horsepower. It doesn't do... It's not that good for your butt riding a horse or something all the time.
Yeah, because didn't Morgan
try to make a joke?
Morgan said something like, "I see that you're putting our gas to good use." And she said the thing about the horsepower and stuff. And then they all pulled their guns out. Yeah, they all pulled their guns out and had the standoff. And then Virginia was like basically saying that this doesn't need to be like this. Lower your weapons. We're not. If I'd wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. And she's like, you'd already be dead by now. You've seen what we've got. You've seen what we're capable of. And she's like, we don't want you dead. We've got nothing against you people. We want you to join us. But, if you
we can help you.
Yeah, and she's like, we could help you get across this bridge and all this lot.
Strand was saying, wanted to know what her helping meant. So, like, if you help us, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And then she said something she said, like they said about watching. How did you know we were here? And it's about watching. And then she made a comment to Dwight about if she knew where Sherry was.
And then she said...
she'd seen Sherry.
And she hadn't. Somebody one of the people within her group had broke bread with her somewhere not that long ago. And then she said, I'm not lying, because she said, you've never mentioned her name on any of your videos.
You didn't say her name. You didn't say her name in the video, yeah.
Yeah, so she's like, how would I know that, sort of thing.
So they told her basically, bog off. They didn't want none of her help. So because they wouldn't take her help, she decided to be an ass and started shooting in the air. Yeah. She goes, there's a herd of them coming. Good luck with that.
Yeah, what did she say? Something like, let's summon the kids for dinner or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And then all these, they got in the Jeep and they were like, if you need us, if you get into any trouble, you know how to get in touch with us. We'll be available on Channel 5 on the radio. You just need to contact us. And they went off, and then all these zombies, sure enough, started piling out, and there was tons of them. And they were trying to get
everybody across the bridge.
And they were like, we can't get the big oil tanker across because the bridge won't hold the weight. Is there any way we can fix it? There's some wood around. Then you had all this, this whole
chaos
section where they were like, let's try and fix the bridge. And while that was going on, they were also trying to work out, can we do anything in the meantime? Let's unload stuff. And
got all the oil. They got all the fuel out of the tanker, didn't they?
Yeah.
So they could use it in the other cars, because said if we can't use it, we're not leaving the fuel here.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were all getting across, and then the bridge started breaking as they were crossing. And that Tom guy, he felt he sort of got caught, didn't he?
Well, he kept recording everything, didn't he? He was still recording.
He was recording it all.
He fell over. I think he tripped over on some of it because the bridge started breaking, and then he fell over, and then he was still filming. And then it was weird because you saw again, it was that camera angle, because it was like his camera that he was recording on.
Yeah.
And he was laid on the ground, and then you could see behind him the bridge just like collapsed, and all the zombies
the tanker just
and
disappeared,
the tanker
didn't it?
all fell into like the river or whatever. And he was like, did you see that? That was amazing. And then he's going, see, this is what, even in like adversity, this group still. And as he was talking, then suddenly you saw again, and all the cables broke. And then there was something happened, and something hit him because it all went sideways. The camera went all crazy. You saw him fall over. And then it didn't show us anything graphic or gruesome, but I said to you, I reckon he probably got like cut in half by one of those cables or something happened, but basically he died. And then it cut from there to Al had been watching the footage that he'd just filmed.
Yeah.
And she was like, I need to get this right, but the power's going and all this lot. And she was like, but we owe it to him to get this bit done right. He believed so strongly in what we were doing and wanted to get that message out there. I need to get this footage done.
Himself, didn't
yeah,
he?
I need to get this footage done properly. And Morgan was like saying about the power and things like that, and we need to decide what we're doing next and stuff like that. And then the power went out, didn't it?
Yeah.
So then they went outside
and they
to
said,
join
we've just
everybody
got
else.
to go. So they headed off to Dodge City.
Yeah, because that was after he did a speech, didn't he? Because you had a small bit where they'd clearly buried him, and the rabbi and the sister were there, and he said, "Would you like me to say a few words?" And she said, "Not here." Like basically say it with the group, but then he never did say anything. He was stood there, but Morgan was talking about Tom and what Tom believed in and what they're trying to do. And he said, he basically gave them he said, if anybody wants to not come with us, then that's, we're not going to force anybody to do anything. And he said, but this is what we're going to do. And we want to make, his death mean something, that what he believed in and stuff is what we believe in, and we're going to prove to Virginia and stuff that her way is not the only way. And everybody was like sort of, yeah, so say all of us type thing. And so then they all trekked off on a big long walk to find this sculpture.
And along the way we had Alicia talking to Wes and asking if he's ever going to paint again, and he said he will. And then we had John asking the rabbi, will he marry them when they get there? Yeah. He said, I've never done a wedding or something.
No, he said, I've never married Gentiles.
Oh, that's
before.
right, or something like that.
But yeah, sure, why not?
And they're going up the hill, and they're nearly at Humbug's Gulch, and we got Janice wanting it filmed, what they're going to come across, and then we saw the place was overrun with walkers.
Absolutely overrun. And then they just all deflated, didn't they? They were just like, after all that we've gone through, and after all that trekking to get here, and we've got here, and they were like trying to work out like what could we do, and like things like that.
June feeling responsible because she was saying she was the one going, we've got to find a settlement to get like, even though it was her fault, get all their hopes up. Everyone was really excited to get there and find we can't. What are we going to do? And there was all this back talking going, we're going to have to contact the woman. And Al was going, no, I'm not doing any of that. That's when Dwight walked off, wasn't it?
Well, Dwight basically said that, he's been with groups before, obviously his experience with the saviors and things. And he was like, I don't want to be any part of this. And he's like, if you're going to do this, then I'm not sticking around. And he just walked off. And they were all debating backwards and forwards, various voices saying, should we, shouldn't we, should we, shouldn't we? And Morgan was obviously the one ultimately that was sort of pondering it all. And then he was like, look, we've run out of water, we've got no food, and we've got no option. We've been backed into a corner.
And like
we're going to have to call
she's
Virginia.
Basically won. And like we said, I personally think she orchestrated the whole lot, because if she knew there was a herd, what's to say that she didn't manage to coax the herd to an area, knowing that was where they were potentially going. If that was the nearest, because if she's been watching them all the time, she must have roughly worked out where they were going, and that was the only big piece of land which they could have lived on that had supplies and stuff. I reckon that, when she said about there's a herd coming, she had obviously orchestrated it so the herd would be there, because they're not like wandering. They're all penned in it, aren't they? They're just in it. It's not like they're wandering around it. They're in it. And I said, I reckon she did that because she knew they had to contact her.
Yes, indeed. So it's going to be
next week's the final.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the final episode. And now that they're going to have to reluctantly throw in with this group of people that they don't want to throw in with.
And they really see what she's really up to as well.
Yeah,
that's going to be interesting. It's like, oh, so yeah, there you go.
So that's Fear the Walking Dead. Right, okay, so let's get stuck in then to our new show that we're adding in, which is The Return of American Horror Story. And this is subtitled 1984. And the first thing I'll say is, we're looking at potentially a slightly different series because we've lost some of the mainstay cast, because there's no Evan Peters. Sarah Paulson is only going to be in it as a guest star. And there's no Kathy Bates, there's no Jessica Lange or anybody like that. So none of the people that were in the original series of American Horror Story. But we do have the return of, we've got Leslie Grossman, who was in the last season, who was the actress that found out she was a witch. And we've got Billie Lourd, who's Carrie Fisher's daughter. She's been in it previously. And Emma Roberts, that's also been in a couple of the previous seasons. And the guy that got introduced last season, who was playing Michael Landon, the Antichrist, he's also in it. And we've got the main sort of antagonist, well, for what we think at the moment anyway, is the guy that was, do you remember the clown, the creepy Twisty the Clown or whatever he was? So he's also in it as the main sort of villain.
Yes.
And that's kind of it. They're all like, the rest of the people are new. And we've also got Matthew Morrison has joined this season. So obviously his link with the people that make the show, Ryan Murphy, and I can't remember what the other guy's name is, but because they also made Glee, so there's obviously that link there. The show that, you know, Matthew Morrison was the star of Glee, and now he's come on board to do this show with those same guys. So we kicked off and we get like 80s graphics and things. They definitely took a leaf out of Stranger Things book with the font style, the opening credits with all of the 80s stuff in there, the music, and even the way
bright colours.
Yeah, and even the way that it's filmed, it's got that slightly softened, sort of slightly blurred kind of style to the way that they're filming it to make it look a bit more period piece rather than modern. And it was actually started in the past, didn't it? And it was a decade
in the
and
70s.
A bit before. Yeah, it was in the 70s. And we get this Camp Redwood, which is your stereotypical horror movie camp, like in Friday the 13th or something. So it's like wood cabins in the middle of the forest, in the middle of nowhere. And you have some people getting up to a bit of, you know, naughty, risque.
2 girls and a guy having a bit of fun.
Yeah. As again, very, very stereotypical horror movie. You know, they're like, oh, lights out and let's all, you know, have a bit of fun. And there's a guy and a girl and they're trying to convince this other girl to join in and stuff. And she was being a little bit timid. This is all going on. And then, yeah, I mean, you know, there's no point dragging it out. They all start getting murdered.
Yeah. And their ears cut off.
Yes, by somebody in like a long. I thought it was like a fisherman's coat, like, you know, like a leathery, you know, like when you see the fisherman and it's like easy to wipe clean and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like a long thing, big boots, and lots of jingling. Because
and they had a club foot.
Yeah, and a club foot. And the person, obviously, the jingling was because there were lots of keys. Person had lots of keys and killed all these people. So it was quite graphic and quite a gross sort of beginning, lots of blood and gore.
Yeah.
And then you saw the final part was that this person dragged one of the bodies and dragged it out into the main like communal bedroom, and you could just see there were just bodies everywhere.
Yeah.
And as you said, you know, cutting off ears and then obviously keeping them as like a trophy. So it was all very, oh my God. So that was an interesting beginning.
Yes.
And
then we went into the modern day, into 1984.
Yes, and it was like a Keep Fit, Jane Fonda-esque sort of exercise class, wasn't it?
Yes.
And you got this weird bit. They're like, they would focus on a character and it would like pause for a second and their name would come up on the screen. And then it would go to the next bit, you know, it'd come like speed up again and show the class, and then it would show another character and pause and show their name. So it's like, okay, these are clearly our main characters that we're going to be following throughout this series.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, then like Xavier and
Xavier's.
He was the exercise class guy, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And then there was Chet and what's the girl's there? Is it Savannah?
Yeah, that's it.
Like that?
I can't remember all the names yet, but I will. I know there's one called Brooke.
Yeah, Brooke. Yeah, well, that's Emma Roberts' character, isn't it, Brooke? And yeah, you got the exercise class, and then you got the little sort of meeting. They were all sat down afterwards, chatting away about being in LA and about how it was really hot and uncomfortable. And there was all this stuff, something to do with the Olympics. Obviously, it was around the time that the Olympics were there, and we find out that Chet was an Olympian, but he was kicked off the team due to drug testing.
Drugs.
And the
Yeah.
interesting thing about him, the actor that plays him, is in real life is actually an Olympic athlete, and he's recently moved. Yeah, and he's recently sort of moved into acting. So it's quite an interesting bit of casting there. And they're just talking about all this stuff that's going on, and then you get introduced to the new girl who's just moved to town, and that's Brooke. And she sort of comes and gets chatting to this core group of characters, and you get a little bit of weird sort of flirtation from Savannah towards her. And you also see obviously Brooke's like eyeing up the boys, and specifically Chet, and they're talking about wanting to get out of town. And there's all this stuff going on about the fact that there's a killer, that there's a killer in town, and it's based off the real life serial killer, the Night Stalker.
Yeah.
Who, interestingly enough, and I only found this out, it didn't click with me at the time, but do you remember in when they did the Hotel series?
Yes.
And they had, I think it was a two-parter around, or it was either a one-parter or a two-parter around Halloween time. And it was called Devil's Night, and it was where all these people got invited to a dinner at the hotel, and they were all like famous serial killers and things like that.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
And they were ghosts, pretty much, most of them. They weren't like real living people. And they were all famous real life serial killers. And one of them was Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. So they've already featured this serial killer in a previous show. So it's a nice little connection, as they like to do, as we know. And anybody that's followed any of the American Horror Story series, they always have little links and connections to the other shows that they've done.
Yeah.
So that was a little connection there by having this character mentioned, and that they're saying, oh, yeah, we need to get out of here. And, you know, LA's a horrible place to be at the moment. And they're on about going because Xavier's got this opportunity to be a camp counselor at this local, you know, this like holiday camp place. And he's like, tries to convince them all to come with him. And it was so cheesy and so wooden, but intentionally so, because again, like in these films you watch and you go, why would they suddenly all just decide to like drop everything and go, yeah, let's all go along to this thing?
Let's all go to summer camp and get
and they all
there
agreed.
instead.
Yeah. And like Brooke said she couldn't because she's only just come there and she was studying or something, and she said classes have just started, I can't leave. And they're like, well, it's up to you. And then they all left, and before they left, Savannah gave her a phone number and like did the whole thing, like pulled out a marker pen and wrote her number on her hand and stuff. And she's like, give me a call if you change your mind. And then that was then when we got Brooke's apartment that night.
Yeah, she got attacked in her apartment, didn't she?
By the Night Stalker.
And robbed by the Night Stalker, yeah.
And he was looking for it. There was a weird bit with her before she went to bed or something, where she had a ring or something. And she like looked at it and it looked sentimental, and she put it in a box, and then she closed the cupboard. And then went and got into bed, and then he broke in, and he obviously threatened her, and he was trying to get her jewelry. And then she hit him with something?
Yeah.
And then he jumped out the window or something, and he said that he was going to find her, and he was like, doesn't matter where you go, I'll find you. And he said about Satan, and I was like, oh, I got this link again with the devil and stuff, because he was like, you know, my Lord, the power of my Lord Satan will help me, I'll find you no matter where you are, and all of this kind of stuff. And so she was really shaken up, and then the next thing you see that she's in this little like minivan thing with the rest of them.
Yeah, she obviously rang the girl up and said, I'm coming with you.
Yeah. So she decided to go with them to this camp, and they're all, you know, it was just again very stereotypical sort of American horror movie thing. Yeah, and there was the thing about drugs, and you know, they had drugs and they were all passing it around, and she's very prim and proper because she's like, no, I don't do anything like that, and all of this kind of stuff. So she's clearly the sort of the whiter than white character out of all the rest of them. And they head off to this camp, and then on the way they hit somebody, didn't they? Oh no, first
they stopped at the gas place, yeah. And it was going to ring, he was ringing somebody, I can't remember what his name was. He said he wanted to use the phone because obviously he didn't have mobiles in those days, so there was like a phone at the gas station, wasn't there?
Yeah.
And there was a weird message on the phone. He rang, because didn't he ring, and it wasn't Xavier that rang and said, hello, this is Xavier.
Yeah.
Or it was something weird. It's like as if they would, is this Xavier? And it was some like spooky message.
Yeah, and basically, wasn't it something about they were all going to die or something?
Yeah. And the gasoline guy told them they shouldn't. He said, I don't recommend you going off there. He said, I don't think that's a good idea. And they thought, well, don't care, we're going. And so they got the gas, and on the way they appeared to hit something on the road.
Yeah, and he went like completely schizo because obviously he was the one driving. So he was like basically trying to convince them to, cover it up and get their story straight, and that, it was the person's fault. It wasn't any because they'd all been drinking and doing drugs and stuff. So he was worried that he was going to get in trouble.
So they got him in the van, didn't they? Because he wasn't dead, wasn't he? They said they'll take him with him. So they said we'll have to take him with us and see if we can get him fixed up.
Yep.
Yeah, so they got there. Was that when they met the nurse, or was that after they? No, I think they first got there. They left the guy in the van, and the woman met them.
The camp owner,
camp woman, and give them a tour of the camp.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying it was her dream, this camp, and all about Charles Keating.
Yeah, and she was very Christian, wasn't she?
Yeah.
Lots of stuff about God.
And about... overly.
And all the rules about like girls shower in the daytime, boys shower at night. They're not allowed in each other's bunks, rooms, and all of this kind of stuff. And no drinking, no smoking, no this, that, and the other. And everything was always referred back to God because it was like, like cleanliness is close to godliness, and avoiding temptation and all of this kind of stuff. Very sort of holier than thou. And then that's then.
Well, they obviously got the guy in, didn't they? And they took him to the infirmary.
Yeah.
And he was obviously in there, and they all sat around the campfire, weren't they, chattering, having toasted marshmallows. And then the nurse started telling them the horror story about the camp massacre that had happened years before.
And she fills
them all out.
And she fills them in about the fact that there's this guy whose name was Benjamin Richter, and that he gained the nickname Mr. Jingles because of the key. And then you go, that's the whole thing with the keys at the beginning then.
Yeah.
That he had the keys and stuff, and that he was a soldier, that he was in the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And then something happened to him when he was out there, and he went a bit nuts and was just killing everybody, like women, children, it didn't matter. And so he came back to the States, and he was like dishonorably discharged or something like that. And then nobody would give him a job, but then somehow he managed to get a job as like the caretaker at the camp. And that explains then why he had so many keys, because obviously if he's caretaker, he needs to access to everywhere. So that's why he's got this bunch of keys. And she was surprised that he'd even got a job like working with kids, given that his like mental state and his track record and stuff. And she said it's always a bit strange how he got that job. And then didn't she say something about all of them, about how it was odd that they've all got this job with no experience and they've never done this before? And she said, do you not think how easy it was for us all to get jobs here and things like that? And before she could go down the route of speculation any further, you then got the boss lady arrived.
And then she revealed that she is a survivor of the massacre. And she told them a bit more about the Mr. Jingles, didn't she?
Yeah.
It's like, oh.
And the fact that she was like, because she'd survived, that God saved her. And then we got like a flashbacky thing, didn't we, where it was her as a younger woman, and that he thought she was dead. And so she pretended to be dead. And then she had like an out-of-body experience where she could see herself and all of the other bodies that she was like lumped in with. And that she had, and then she showed them her ear, and she had her ear was missing. So she'd had her ear cut off, but she'd not died. Oh no, she hadn't, had she? Or did she have her ear cut off?
Was it? I can't remember whether, I think she was the only one that didn't have her ear cut off.
Yeah.
I can't remember now.
I know why I thought that, because at the same time she was telling them all of this story, you then got the cut to the infirmary, and the hitchhiker guy woke up
from the road had woken up and found out his ear was missing.
And then he was panicking because he realised where he was.
And he warned her to leave. He said, you need to leave, you don't want to stay here. He realised where he was, yeah.
So then you're like, well, what happened? How has he got an ear missing, and why is he freaking out about being there? So that was all rather interesting. So then they all dispersed and went back to their dorm, and they did what?
Well, they all went together. They did exactly what she told them not to do. So they all got together. And then Trevor turned up. He's the activities leader.
Yeah.
And he was in the Jane Fonda workout video.
Yep. And he
had lots of beer.
Yep. And he was very stereotypical, that type of character, wasn't he? Very, very jock-like, very buff. Tight shorts, a moustache, and things like this. You know, there was a lot of
Matthew Morrison in tight shorts.
Yes, and that was to sort of highlight a particular feature that he has. Lots of penis talk in that section.
There was lots and lots of talk about that.
Yeah.
So they were having a good old time, and then he went down to the lake, didn't he, with the blonde bit. What was she called? Savannah.
It's Montana, not Savannah. Yeah,
Montana.
Because she
And
was a
got
big
in.
fan
They
of him.
both. Yeah.
And so she got
She was chatting him up.
She got in the lake and she was clearly naked, and she was telling him to come in and join her, and that she wanted to see what he had and things like that, because it was like the first thing that she did certain stuff to that video. So she wanted to experience it in person. So he gets in the water with her. Then
somebody was watching them.
Yeah, that was weird because, and I'll tell you why I think it's weird, because of later on in the rest of that episode. But they're in the water and he disappeared under the water and she's enjoying herself, and then she looks and there's like a flash of lightning, and then there's a car up on the ridge overlooking the lake.
Yeah, headlights, wasn't there?
And then it all goes dark and she panics and he's like, "What happened?" He's like, you nearly strangled me with your thighs. And she's like, "I think we should go. I think we should get out of the water and stuff." And he's like, "What's wrong?" And she's like,
Yeah.
"We need to get out now because there's a storm coming." So they get out of the water, and right enough, there is a storm. And again, stereotypical horror movie thing. It's pouring down, it's thunder and lightning, and all of this kind of stuff.
Setting the scene and all.
Yes.
So then we went to another bit where we were in a city or something, and there was all the pandemonium, there's blue flashing lights, and there was all these lunatics on the grass wandering around. And apparently the guy Jingles that was in this asylum had apparently let everyone out, and he was on the loose. And then they showed 3 hours earlier what had happened, didn't they?
Mm-hmm.
It was Med's time.
Yeah.
And he was tonguing himself, didn't he?
And that wasn't that clever.
And he went in, yeah.
Because he was hanging, but
Yeah.
And the guy went in to check, and he was like mocking him and stuff, like, obviously not very nice, orderly. And then he wasn't dead, and he killed the orderly. And then it was clever when he undid it, because although he appeared to be hanging, he'd obviously tied. It
was clever the way he tied it, wasn't it?
Yeah,
yes.
He tied like a safety thing around his waist or something, so the weight wasn't fully on his neck. So although he was hanging, he wasn't like, he'd created like a harness almost. So he let himself down. He took the keys again, the jingle, and left the room. And then on his way out, he pressed the button that released all of the other inmates. So it's clearly like a psychiatric prison type place, isn't it? They're all mentally unstable prisoners and stuff. And then he let them all out. And then you got this bit where there was a guy sat at a desk, and he could see somebody approaching through the little window. And then as it got closer, you saw it was the orderly, wasn't it? But he was dead, or he was dying. He was like, ha! And then Mr. Jingles appeared behind him and obviously killed that guy, and then got away and left the place.
Asylum.
Yeah.
And we saw there was a newspaper cutting, wasn't there, in his room?
Yeah,
about the camp reopening.
Because it cut back to the present time, so after the flashback, and she's obviously like the
psychiatrist.
Yeah, was she a psychiatrist, or was she like the boss of the? Because that was the other thing. Yeah, I know. Yeah, because the boss was Mitch Pileggi from the X-Files. Skinner. Skinner from the X-Files was clearly the guy in charge, and she must have been like the head psychiatrist or something. And while she was looking around his cell, she noticed this thing on the ground, and she picked it up, and it was a piece of paper, and she unfolded it, and it was the news to say that the camp had reopened. So then you're like, so she now knows where he's going.
Yeah. It's like, ooh. So back at the camp, they were having a row over the Olympics, weren't they? Because it was something on the telly in the room, and obviously you say one of the guys had been disqualified because of the drugs.
Yeah.
And the nurse had gone in to check on the guy, the hitchhiker guy, or whatever he was that they knocked over.
Not the nurse.
No, the girl. Oh no, it was Brooke, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She went to check on him again, and he was hanging on the back of the door.
Yeah, he was dead, like pinned to the back of the door, and she had a complete breakdown, freak out, and then she like ran off, and then he appeared, didn't he? Mr. Jingles was there, and he was like chasing her, and she like fell down in the mud, and she was like all this kind of. And
she rushed into the thing and told him about it, and when they came out, there was no hiker. No Jingles. Nobody believed her. Typical.
very stereotypical horror movie of like, there's one person that's aware of what's going on, and you feel like that one person is going to be the one that survives like through all of this, because nobody believes them. Nobody believes them and
Nobody
thinks they're
believes
going
anything's
mad
happening,
and
yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
And she didn't want to. She didn't want to tell the woman, the camp owner woman, because she thought she might send her home, thinking you're delusional. And plus, obviously, now she knows that she was the survivor of the massacre. She thought, well, I don't want to tell her because it's gonna freak her out. Maybe I did mention in it. I'm sure I didn't, but maybe I did.
Yeah.
And then the phone was ringing at the payphone on the
Yeah.
camp. But all the phone lines were dead.
Yeah.
And I thought, is she going to answer it? And then in the background behind her, we saw the Night Stalker was there.
Yeah, so he'd done what he said. He had tracked her down. So it's like, it's an interesting setup to the very first episode. And like I said, what I loved is the fact that it wore all of its cliched horror movie 1980s references and inspiration on its sleeve. It was unapologetic. Yeah. Like saying, it was done knowingly. It wasn't done like, oh, this is crappy TV because they're using all these cliches. It was, they're using all these cliches on purpose.
Yeah.
So I really like that.
They wanted to make it feel authentic because that's how it was. And if you'd watched that in the 80s, that would have been how it was.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a. So
really now we have got the Jingle Jangle Man, and then we've got two psychos basically somewhere out there. It's like, oh dear. First episode, this is a bit exciting, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, so you've got a troubled psychotic serial killer that's escaped from a mental institution to go on a rampage again. You've got a real life serial killer that's been incorporated into the show. And then you've got all this mystery about like, oh, how did they all get these jobs? What's the deal with the woman that survived? She's a bit weird. The thing with the weird thing with the hitchhiker, and all of it. There's so many odd elements that they introduced in that first episode that set things up to be really intriguing.
Yeah, I was impressed. I didn't think I was going to like it, but I did. I thought, I really like this.
Yeah. So then we move on to the second part, episode 2, which was called Mr. Jingles. And this is, things take quite an interesting turn throughout the course of this episode, I thought. And we'll discuss that. My theories and stuff towards the end, but
so at the beginning of this one, we had a woman arriving in a car looking for Margaret, and the woman turned out to be the psychiatrist we'd seen at the end from the institute, where Jingles had escaped, and she'd come to tell Margaret to close the camp down. She said it's not safe. I know he's heading here, so you don't want to. She was dismissive of it, and said, no, it'll be fine. He doesn't scare me and all this stuff. And she goes, well, I've told you now, that's all I can do. So she got back in her car and started driving away. And then she went over something, didn't she? It was like she went over something and her tyre punctured.
Yeah.
So she had to pull her car in, and then next thing we saw this big truck thing behind her with loads of lights.
2 seconds, just rewind a second. I never got to say the bit I thought was weird in the first one. So the other thing we got with Mr. Jingle, before he turned up at the camp, we got the shot of the gas station where they'd stopped. And the mechanic was under a car.
Yeah.
And then somebody came in and he was like, buddy, you're not allowed in here. This isn't open to the public. And then he basically got crushed by the car. And it was Mr. Jingles had killed him. And he took all of his keys. So it's like, okay, so he's collecting keys again. And then he took the vehicle, the breakdown truck. Now, the reason I was confused here was because of the timeline of these things happening. And I thought that bit when they were in the water can't have been Mr. Jingles in the car up on the ridge, because the timelines don't match up. So that couldn't have been him arriving and watching them. That had to be somebody else. So then it's like, who is that someone else? It would have probably been
the Night Stalker.
Was it, was it the Night Stalker? Was that him?
Or somebody else.
Or somebody else, yeah. So sorry, I just wanted to cut back because we forgot to mention that bit. So so she breaks down, and then luckily a tow truck shows up. But obviously we know who's driving the tow truck because of what I just said.
But I got the feeling like she did as well.
I don't know what she was thinking, to be honest.
It was very weird the way she sort of... She wound the window down and shouted, can you help me out with this? I've gone over something in my tyre. But she sat there, and I mean, obviously, why did she not think that weird? This car just turns up. She's still on the campsite, isn't she, at this point?
Yeah.
But there was a big, dagger, something stuck in the tyre, wasn't there? was like it's a weird shape, like sharp stuff, something sharp, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It wasn't like just a tack or something. And she made a comment about it, didn't she? That she said, "Oh, that looks nasty" or something.
But as she was doing all this, she started winding up her window again, didn't she?
Yeah, it's almost like she said, "Hang on, this ain't right." And then you tell me, I can't remember exactly how it happened.
And well, then
he got her, didn't he?
Because he like walked round to the window to show her this thing a bit more clearly, and she was obviously starting to get a little bit freaked. Because did she not? Yeah. Oh no, that's what happened. It's because when he was walking towards the car, you could hear the jingling, and then that's obviously what made her realise who it was.
It's him.
And then he appeared. He like crouched down and looked in the window. She said, "It was lucky you found me." And then he crouched down and said, "That's because you've been following me." And then she was like, "Ah!" And then he killed her.
Yeah, they killed her.
And then obviously chopped her ear off and stuff. So it was like, oh dear.
And then we went back to the kids in the house, and there was a TV report on about the killings by the Night Stalker.
Yeah.
But I was confused because she was watching a TV program.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Did you see that?" And then when they looked at the telly, it was nothing to do with the news. I thought, has she just seen that and they haven't seen it? Or did it go to an advert on the telly, and that's why they didn't see it, or what?
Yeah,
like,
quite
hang on.
possibly.
Do you know what I mean? It's all like, what?
Oh no, I know what they saw.
Like,
they said that it was to do with the psychiatrist woman, that they said there was a thing on the news that they were investigating a killing on the road or something.
She had read that. She had seen it,
but
they
none of
were
the
all
rest
talking, and then But when they looked back at the telly, she said, "Did you see that?" And they looked at the telly, and it was like, it looked like an advert for donuts or something.
Yeah.
So it must have gone straight into an advert, and they actually didn't hear the actual. But then she started thinking, was it actually on there? Did I see it on there? You didn't see it. Am I making? She felt like she was going nuts, didn't she?
And
then we had the bit. Was that the bit where
she then opened up to Montana about how that attack wasn't the worst thing.
Before that, we had Margaret came in and told them all off and said, "You guys go off and you got to go. It's not night now. You know my rules. Girls here, boys there. It's your shower time." And she sent them all off.
That's right. So the girls went back to their...
and then they had a heart-to-heart.
Yeah. So the boys went off. The girls were left alone. And then she opened up to her about how that wasn't the worst thing that's ever happened to her. And then we get this weird flashback to her getting married.
Last summer, she was getting married. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was all nice and pretty. And it was like she's in a beautiful white dress and all of this kind of stuff. And then just before they were about to do their vows and everything, the husband-to-be started going a bit weird and accusing her of basically cheating on him with the best man.
The best man.
And he said, "I saw him go into your house. I was watching you," and all of this. And she's like, "No, it's not what you think." She was like, I was getting nervous and upset about everything and anxious about the wedding. He stopped by to check on me. And the guy was like, "Yeah, and I just stayed the night. But I slept on the settee or something." And this guy wouldn't believe them. And he was like, "Oh, you're messing with me, this, that." And she's like, "No, I swear I didn't do anything. I love you. It's only you I want." And sort of implying as well that she's been saving herself. She's again, another horror movie cliche. She's a virgin and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he just freaked out and he pulled out a gun, didn't he?
He shot the best man and the other guy.
He shot the best man. He shot her dad. And then everyone was screaming and running away.
Loads of people ran out of the church.
And then you thought he was going to shoot her because he pulled her in and he was like about how nobody else could have her and this, that, and the other. But then he shot himself and covered her in blood.
All over her. Oh, that's gross.
And she was just...
Because that ring she had, is the ring that she had.
Yeah. That was her
it showed the
ring
ring when he was squeezing her hand.
Mm-hmm.
Or an engagement. It was probably the engagement ring, wasn't it? Because he would have put the ring.
Yeah.
Or was that the wedding ring? And that's the ring she had put in the box. Or she wears it or looks at it and then puts it away.
Yeah.
That was the relevant to that. It's like, whoa. And then that was when that girl kissed her, wasn't it? After she told her that story.
Yeah, she leaned in to kiss her and then she sort of pulled away, like, "What are you doing?" kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, love.
Yeah.
No, thanks. So then we had the boys going out into the middle of nowhere in the dark, heading off to the showers, like making a big comment, like, "Really, seriously?" I'm making a comment about, like, where's the soap and expect it to be all luxurious, and it was really basic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they get there, and the next bit you see Margaret in a room. She decides to turn all the electric off. It's like, she just sent him out for a shower. Okay, yeah, it's water, it's different. No lights, no nothing.
Yeah.
It's like, seriously? She's gone nuts or something. So the guy that was moaning about the soaps or something, he went to his... Did he say he had some... He had some in his bag, so he went off to get some, didn't he? What was his name?
Xavier.
Xavier, yeah.
Yeah.
And he got cornered by some guy. Somebody grabbed him, and it was this guy called Blake or something.
Yeah, who bundled him into a car, and he was just basically like implying that you can't get away from me, and like he's his like his sugar daddy or something, because he said, you owe everything to me. I found you when you were nothing and when you were strung out on drugs and stuff, and I helped you get yourself sorted out. And he's like, but he's saying about what he's done for him, and you're indebted to me. And then he pulled out a gay porn video, and he was like, look, I don't do that. I told you I'm not gay. And he's like, I'm trying to be a proper actor now, and I'm that was the thing I did. And he's like, you do what I tell you to do, because, basically like he's his daddy and stuff. And he's like, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to ruin you. And I'm going to send this to all your friends. And I'm going to send this here, there and ever. And I'm going to send it to your mother and all of this kind of thing, and show everybody what you've been up to. And he's like, but I want to be a proper famous actor like Tom Selleck, or who was the other person he said? Tom Selleck. Oh, Michael J. Fox.
Yeah, Michael.
And he's like, you don't see them doing stuff like this. And he's like, why do you want to go through all that? I could make you a massive star doing this. You could earn millions. Yeah. And he's like, but I don't want to. And then he threatened him and stuff. And then he said, look, let me go. And he's like, I'll give you a replacement. So I've got someone else that would be even better for you. He could be the next John Holmes, who is that famously, if anybody knows doesn't have to know about porn, but because he made like a biopic about him and stuff, that he was exceptionally well endowed, and he's got somebody in mind. And we obviously know where this was going because of obviously the previous episode. So he took him to the shower cubicle, and
the guy was perving through the hole in the
there was
in the wood, wasn't it?
Yeah.
At
Trevor.
What's his name? Trevor. Yeah. And the young guy, Xavier, sort of thought, oh, while he's preoccupied, I'm going.
Yeah.
And he went running, didn't he?
Snuck off, didn't he?
He ran off, and the next thing, you see the guy eyeing up the people, and the next thing, what? Somebody stabbed him through the head, through the eye.
And like the end
and it
of
gone
the night,
right into the shower bit, didn't it, as well?
It went through the like peephole bit, didn't it?
Yeah. And regardless, the other guys were just drying themselves and talking, weren't they? No one was any more aware of what had happened. So I was thinking, how did they not hear that?
So you're like, oh, that's...
So we had...
So, but then it's like that thing about who killed him, because you go, well, is it Mr. Jingles or was it the other guy? You don't know.
So we had Brooke, after her like little chat with Montana, had gone to sit by the lake, and she was just sitting there dangling her legs. She go, oh, dang your legs, crocodile, something's going to grab her.
Yeah.
Typical, like, something's going to happen. And then there was something in the water there, wasn't there?
It was a body.
Like, oh, a body.
Yeah.
So she jumped up, went to run back, and the Night Stalker was there, wasn't he?
Yeah, and he's like, I told you that Satan, my Lord Satan, would help me find you. And she's like, ah, and then he's like chasing her, running through the woods.
She grabbed a bit of wood or something, hit him, and then ran. She got away from him, didn't she? And she was running, and all of a sudden this person appeared from nowhere.
Yeah, the hitchhiker guy.
And then, it's like, oh, I called him Bandana Guy. And it's like, okay, I was confused. I was thinking, hey.
Yeah, very.
So he knocked him flying, and which saved her because it gave her some more time.
Yeah.
But he paid the price because he slashed him to death.
Yeah, didn't he like stab him and then cut his throat?
But before he did that, the guy turned around to the Night Stalker guy and said, "You're not supposed to be here." And then when he went to kill him, he says, "I don't die here."
Yeah.
I was like, "What? What are you on about?"
Yeah, that was all really, really weird.
Yeah, and then we had the nurse. She was listening to some tunes, having a little boogie, and then Jingles turns up.
Yeah, so you're like, uh-oh, she's going to be dead now. But that was very brief, that moment. Whoa. You didn't get to see what happened.
That was very, very brief.
You got to see him show up and her panic, and then that was like... But then didn't it then cut back to them again? And
it cut back to the Night Stalker again, and the guy was there again. He was like...
Yeah, he bumped into him again.
He said, I just killed you. And he killed him again.
Yeah, didn't he like...
And then when he turned around, he was gone again.
Smashed his head against a rock or something, and then
Yeah.
he looked away, and then he looked back, and there was no body there or anything. He's like, what's going on? And then you're like, okay, so there's ghosts in this one as well? Like, as well
So
as like
cool.
serial killers and that, there's ghosts too or something? So that was all really, really weird.
So then the guys that were coming out of the shower spotted the man stuck on the shower thing.
Still there in the same position, yeah.
Oh, and Xavier came back, didn't he? And he went, don't touch him. You know, he was going to touch it. Someone's going to touch him. I said, no, because they'll think we've done it.
Yeah.
That'd be like, even though they don't know about, it's like proof that we've... Oh, that was... And then, did he tell him who he was? Oh, no, he made out he didn't know who he was, didn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
It's like... His reaction, and he went, I haven't got a clue. Who is he? Like you do. They go, right, we got to get out of here. And the girls by then had joined them, hadn't they?
Yeah.
And they said, we've just got to leave. So that was the plan. Meanwhile, the Night Stalker had turned up at Margaret's lodge.
Yes. And this was very weird.
This was very odd. And he was asking about the guy. Because what he did is he dropped his tag or something, didn't he? The last time he killed him.
It was like an identity badge thing, wasn't it?
So he went to the lodge and he wanted to tell him who he was.
And you had this really weird thing.
Telling him.
You had the really weird thing because she claims to be a servant of God, and he's like a devil worshipper. So they're like polar opposites. Because he was like, because didn't he say something like about? She was like, "How did you get here?" And he's like, "My Lord sent me." And she's like, said about God, and he was like, "No, the other favorite son, or the one that was cast out." And then she's like, "Oh," and she like invited him in and stuff. And then they were having this really weird conversation, and she was patched up his head from where he'd obviously Brooke had hit him, and they were talking away about everything. And then he like opened up to her about why he does
when he was little, why he's like he is,
and all of the things that happened when he was a child. That his mum worked at some factory, so she was breathing in fumes that he said I was poisoned even before I could learn to breathe. And then growing up, there was trouble at home, and then what happened to him? Something happened. He got hit in the head by a swing, which then made him have fits.
Convulsions, fits, yeah.
And then his uncle or his cousin or something.
Oh, he was widow.
Showing him pictures of like when because he was a war veteran himself, and he was showing him all these photographs of horrific things. And it was like all this weird stuff, like about his upbringing was not conventional in any way. And that basically made him grow up to be the kind of person that he is. And she was really sympathetic, and she's like, "Oh, it's not your fault. You're a product of your upbringing. It's all this trauma and stuff like that." And that she could help him to be free. And she said that she needed his help because there was somebody here, because she was like, "We're trying to build something here, a safe haven and stuff. And there's somebody here that could ruin all of that. And so I need you to help me to deal with this problem." And then she's like, "You're going to help me to take care of it." And she's like, "But don't kill anybody else. That's the only thing I ask you to do is don't kill anyone else except for this one person." So you're like...
So she's now going, this is going to be handy. I've got a serial killer I can use to help get rid of another killer without anyone else getting injured. So it's like, Because she also told him, when he asked about that bandana boy, she said he's been dead for 14 years. Didn't she? She said to him. So they all piled in the car.
Yeah.
But the nurse came out of nowhere, and they they tried to avoid her obviously after last time, and they smashed into Margaret's car, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right. And so then you're like,
she told them
the nurse is okay then, so he didn't kill her.
Yeah, and she said apparently Jingles had come into the surgery and she'd locked him in there.
But then isn't it weird that we didn't get to see what happened? So then alarm bells were already going off in my head, because I was like, wait a second, why didn't he kill her? He either didn't kill her because she somehow connected to stuff, or he didn't kill her because, we don't yet know. Because at the moment, it seems like he just kills indiscriminately. There is no rhyme or reason to why.
Unless because she might have just got out of the room and locked him in. Might have went quick, got out before he, saw him and stuff.
Yeah, but there is another option.
What?
Well, because previously the fact that we got established that the bandana guy, as you call him, isn't actually like real person. He's a ghost. What if she's a ghost as well?
What, the nurse?
Yeah, what if he did kill her, and that they're now seeing her ghost. Because the fact that we never got the scene, we never got to see on camera what happened between them when he encountered her in the infirmary.
Also, because then when they couldn't get the car to start, she said you could take my car, but it's not big enough, and the keys were in the thing.
Yeah.
And somebody else's keys, Trevor's keys were in their dorm.
Yeah, because Trevor has a motorbike.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But did the nurse go with them when they split into groups? Did they go together, or did she stay by the cars?
She went with Brooke and Ray's the black guy, isn't he? So yeah, she went with Brooke, Ray, and Chet, the Olympian guy, and Trevor took Montana and Xavier with him.
Yeah. So they went off, and in the meantime, we had Margaret wandering around the grounds of the camp and found Jonas, his name is.
Yes, that's right.
And we found out what happened to him.
And the fact that
he's dead, but he's trapped there because, like she said, something like if they'd, basically he was going to be attacked. He thought she'd got killed. He felt bad because he'd run away and tried to save himself. A car coming down this road hit him.
And then somebody came out
killed him. And they took, instead of just taking him away, they took him back to the camp before he died. He didn't die until he got to the camp, probably. Because she said, if you were on the road, you'd never have been here, basically. Yeah. Because they brought you back into the camp. Now you're here forever. Your ghost is here.
But what was interesting, too, about this exchange was that he didn't know what year it was, because he was confused, because he said, I know you, but you look different. And then he said, he thought it was 1970 still, and didn't realize he was a ghost, because it was weird, because he can interact with stuff and she could touch him and things like that.
Yeah.
So even though he's a ghost, he's solid, which is strange.
Yeah.
And she asked him when he got hit by the car and stuff, she asked him, did he see the person? And he couldn't confirm if it was Mr. Jingles. So then that makes you wonder, is that actually who killed him?
Yeah. Maybe she did.
Well, yeah, now this is what I'm starting to wonder.
I thought it was going to be her, because she was near the car when he ran away.
I am suspicious of her. I'm suspicious of her behaviour. I'm suspicious of when the psychiatric woman came to see her, she was very weird. And there was I'm sure there was something about, she asked her if she'd gone into her bedroom or something. So you're like, what's she hiding? And then the way that she's being with the people in general, that whole weird
thing with the lights.
Yeah, the thing with the lights, the weird stuff with the serial killer guy, the fact that she's basically recruiting him, even though she's a godly woman, she's recruiting a serial killer to go and kill someone else. And then this exchange with this ghost guy, the fact she was the only one that survived that night and things like that. There's so many questions here that make
It's good.
And knowing what these programs
it makes for a good American Horror Story.
But you know what these shows are like. There are always twists. Things are not always what they seem. So I wonder whether what if she set him up, Mr. Jingles? What if she set him up? And it's not.
That's why he's back.
And he's back for revenge on her, or something. I don't know. There's something else going on here that I can't quite put my finger on, and it's not all.
Or she was party to it, and why did she not get punished, and he did, or something like that? It's like, ooh.
And then our final moments of this was obviously they split up to go to the separate places, and they're looking for the keys and things, and then you got all of this dramatic cuts between the two where somebody or something was coming for them, and both the doors were getting banged on. And they were trying to barricade the doors and stuff. So somebody is. So you're so is the Night Stalker gone to one and Mr. Jingles gone to the other, or is one of them somebody else? Is it going to be one of the cabins is going to be there's going to be a goodie the other side? Somebody else, a new character that's come to help or something, or is one of them going to be Margaret or what? It's you don't know who's on the other side of these doors, but whoever it is.
They're definitely not leaving anytime soon anyway, are they? But all in all, very good.
Yeah. What I like as well, what I'm enjoying, is the fact that because this is shorter than previous seasons, this is only 13 episodes, this one, that in the past we've seen some of the series where they've, you've had these sort of weird, almost filler-like episodes where things kind of drag a little bit. Nothing's dragging. So much has happened in the first couple of episodes already. Yeah.
but also giving you, I thought there's got to be something else going on. It's not going to just be as simple as bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, there's more to it. But not to the... So you're sort of working out in those ideas now, rather than like, say, 3-4 episodes in, and you're going, there's something else going. We're sort of like working it out from the get-go, aren't we?
Yeah.
Or trying to. So yeah, it's very clever. Very good.
Yeah.
I'm really pleased, because I was really worried I wasn't going to like it, because my boy isn't in it. I thought, Evan's not in it, it can't be any good. But it's very good.
Yeah, it's very good. They've done a good job so far.
So I can't wait till next week.
No, me neither. So there we go. So that's American Horror Story 1984 for this week. So now we will move on to our discussion, our final part of the podcast, which is discussing this week's and last week's episodes of Preacher. And this episode was called Fear of the Lord. And we finally, after 4 seasons, we got a little bit of backstory on one of our characters, didn't we? So we opened up with the question that we had about what happened to him in the last episode. He was like in a cave, and he'd been rescued by 3 brothers, I presume. I think they were brothers, weren't they?
Yeah.
And they were odd-looking people. And they'd done some work on him and replaced his lost genitals with a tap.
Yeah.
Oh, that was so weird. It was such an odd image. When I was looking for the images that I could use for this episode, obviously, as we'll talk a bit more as we go through, but there were several that I was like, that would be great, and then I thought, no, I can't put that on because I might get in trouble. I mean, I know there's other things. It would have been
brilliant, but no.
Yeah, I know. So I know there's other things out there where some of these pictures are probably used, but I thought it's probably not worth the risk. So a picture of a naked her star with a tap. As a penis would probably not, I might get in trouble. My channel might get in trouble for that. So I avoided that one. But yeah, what a funny image. And then we got like a flashback sequence.
Yeah.
And it was
when he was a small child, wasn't it?
Yeah, 1979 in Dusseldorf.
Yeah.
And it was one of these like pageant sort of competition things, because he's always said about how he had looks and he was beautiful and this, that, and the other, but we've never really seen it. So then we get to see him, and he's not that much different to how he looks now, except he's, obviously got no weird eye or scars or anything. He's obviously got all of his body parts, and he had hair. He had like a blonde bob almost.
Yes.
And he kept winning this competition year after year after year, much to the annoyance of all the other kids, to the
Everybody
point where
else.
He was actually still winning this clearly children's competition when he was still a grown man, which was quite funny. The fact that it kept rolling through the years and he was winning every year and he was getting older. So that was quite amusing. And so he started out as a kid, but then we got to see the star that we know, minus all of his like battle scars and things. And then we got to see how, like, what happened to him. And he was in the like changing rooms, and all the other kids come in and they're all really cross with him. And he's like going, sort of referring to them as the different titles, like Mr. Congeniality and this, that, and the other. And one of them just went, "Get him!" And they all like beat him up, didn't they? He got beat up by all these kids, and they scarred him.
Well, they shaved his hair, They shaved his hair off then, didn't they? Because obviously that was his prize-winning look. And they scarred him basically, so that's how he ended up so scarred.
Yeah, so that's why he lost his looks, and obviously the assumption there is that he could then no longer participate in these competitions because he no longer was beautiful. So then it goes from that back to the cave. So
we find there's 3 weird hillbillies.
Yeah.
And saying they're trying to get him better. At the time, he doesn't know that anything's changed to him, does he?
No.
And they give him some food and go, "Come on, we've made you some food. It'll get you strong." And
you're the guest,
he's eating
so you
it
eat first.
He's eating. He's eating away, and they're enjoying it. And then he realised they're eating his leg.
Yes, and we got this horrible shot where obviously we saw that his leg was missing, and then he looked over and there was
barbecuing at the
end, and his leg was on the barbecue, and he spat, and he was like started shouting at them, and they all looked really shocked, like, why are you being so shocked? And he's kind of like, oh, what are you doing to me? And he's like, do you realize who I am? I'm the most important man in the world. And he's like, said he had a subdermal chip. And he said, right this moment, the biggest, strongest armed force in the world is converging on my location to come and rescue me and to mercilessly slaughter you three inbred hillbillies. And he's like, what, all this stuff. I'm really going off of them. And they all just sat there for a minute and looked, and they listened, and they were like, oh. And then they were like, oh, he's clearly, what they say is like his blood's up or something. So we can move on to your favorite part, the one that seemed the most
thigh.
normal. He said to the other two, we can move on to your favorite part. And yeah, it was something to do with the thigh, wasn't it? And so they got some like saws and things like that out. But then just before anything could happen, he did get rescued.
Featherstone came to the rescue and stopped them.
Yes. So what he had said
like,
was
yay!
right. So there was a bit of a delay from when he said it, because obviously he was going right now, and nothing happened. He went right now, and nothing happened. And then they carried on that scene, and then they burst in, and they like just killed them all, and came to his rescue. And he just like burst into tears, didn't he? Because he was like, he looked so pathetic, laid there on the bed with his no ear. Well,
his tap.
Yeah, his tap.
And one leg half a leg.
Yeah, the scarred eye, the cut in the middle of his head, the ear that's not really an ear. Just looked like a really pathetic sight.
Yeah.
And then
she believes in him, so she's gone to save him.
And then you got the image of her walking out into the desert, carrying him like a baby, flanked by all of the Grail guards. Oh, that was so
bless.
Funny. That was so funny.
Then we went back to Jesse, because obviously Jesse had been asked to sit on the throne.
Yes.
Wouldn't sit on the throne. And at first I thought these things were happening. Well, they probably were happening to him, but it was like, was it an illusion? He was in a cage with ants in a tube.
Oh. Yeah,
and then
that was horrible.
The next thing you know, he's on fire.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on here? And we had quite a few things like that.
Yeah, because he said, because he refused again, he refused the throne, and then he said, what are you going to, he said, look, you can put me back in that room, I'm used to it now, I've been seeing visions of, like, my father's death and stuff all my life, so it's not having any effect. And then Fiore was like, oh no, we've moved on to the next stage now, we've got other things in store for you, and that's when you got all the other stuff.
Because there was rats.
Yeah.
You could hear gunfire. The Saint was there. He took him. And we found out that the Saint was a general, and he was telling him the story about the general and his maps, wasn't he? About this guy who had the map sideways or something, and everyone got killed.
Yeah,
and he said,
presumably that was during the like Civil War or something.
Yeah. And basically he said, we used the captain. He said, no, I was he was the guy with the map turned the wrong way, which got everyone killed.
Yeah.
And there was all this horses wailing, crying noises.
Because he's laid down by the fire, and obviously the Saint's been telling him all these stories. And then Jesse's like listening to the noise, and the Saint's like, they're only gonna keep coming, they're gonna get closer. And he was like, and then he looked around and he went, wait, where the hell did you get a horse from? And then it got revealed that all of that was an illusion as well. Nothing
had happened, it's just that was all part of the plan.
Yeah.
And he was telling him, there's no way, you can't get out. You've got, you're here. You've got to, okay, keep giving you these things to force you into it.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a voice, wasn't there?
Yeah.
There was a voice calling him.
Mm-hmm.
Saying, Jesse, live.
Yeah, because they forced him onto the throne. Because he'd gone through all that and he still was refusing. So then all of the like warrior angels grabbed him at Fiore's instruction, and they forced him onto the throne. And then you got all this weird like imagery of like stars exploding and things being born and all of this kind of stuff. And then you heard the voice, presumably God's voice, telling him to live. And then it was a flash of like, it just all went white. And then that went, and we
saw, before we go on, basically we saw him, he heard that, and then when we saw him digging his way out, basically.
Of his grave, mud. So he'd been brought back to life.
Yeah. So then we went to Tulip and Cassidy, who kidnapped Humperdoo.
Yeah.
And she wanted to kill him.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't want to just kill him. She said, I want to do it in front of God. He's got to he's got to see this and all this stuff. And they got some sort of like cabin, and they were there for about 3 months.
Yeah, because didn't it jump ahead? Because she was
Yeah,
gonna.
3 months later, they were still waiting for God, for the opportunity to bring him in front of God.
Because she was shouting to God when they threw him out of the car, and she had the gun to his head, and she was like, "I want him to see this," and she's like, "Come on, you son of a bitch, where are you?" and all of this stuff. And then she was stood there, and then you had the cut 3 months later, and you're like, they're still waiting for God to show up, and they've established this weird little domestic life, the three of them.
Yeah, and he was helping. Cass got to like him a lot.
Yeah.
And they were like collecting wood and pine cones, but she was like, not still, else she's going to kill him. And that, bless him, he was like a suicide bomber, wasn't he?
Yeah, they had him
She had him
strapped up with C4.
with explosives.
And they had this weird drill that they did with him, where they got him to go, what was it, to go to the moon?
Yeah, go to the rocket or something, because you're going to the moon or something.
And he had to run outside and get in the fridge.
He had to run outside. Yeah.
And the moon! I do live on the moon! Oh, so
bless him. And at one point they couldn't find him, and they went looking for him.
Yeah.
And there he was playing with the deers.
Oh yeah, and that was a really cute
And Cass was
moment.
going, "Look at that! Oh look at him!" And he's like, the deers are there with him. And then she goes, then he called him. And he went, "Oh no, come back."
Yeah.
And he goes, "We're gonna have to check you for ticks now." So he just got a bond with him, didn't he?
Yeah.
It's like she was just like, "Oh, stop it, Kaz.
But she
need to keep him with us until we can find God and like make him die."
She looked a little bit concerned by the fact that he's becoming very attached to Humperdoo. It's kind of like, this is not the plan, kind of thing. No. But then we got a break from them, and we got to see them.
We went to Masada. The conference.
Yeah. And Hitler was still trying to convince Jesus that he needs to be the Messiah that everybody needs.
Star came back, didn't he? Mm-hmm. And he had a false leg this time. Now that squeaked as he walked.
Yeah. And then we got an amazing moment, because he was then, obviously her star comes in, sits down, and they're saying about that they've got a plan and everything, and he says, I know, basically he knew it was Hitler that had killed Humperdoo, the clone Humperdoo.
Yeah, he said they told him he committed suicide, didn't he?
Yeah, and then he said, I know that's not true. And then he was like, but never mind. He said, we have an alternative. And he was like, check this out. And then he got a ghetto blaster, and Jesus pulled off his robe and had like hip hop like clothes on. And they
I noticed he had trainers on. I was thinking, why has he got trainers on? And then he took his robe off and he was in a tracksuit, wasn't he?
And then they proceeded to play Run DMC's It's Tricky while Jesus did some breakdancing, which was amazing. And I remember saying to Zoe at the time, I was like, this is the best thing ever, a breakdancing Jesus. That's great. Oh, so good. But, her star was still not impressed, and he said ultimately it's not my decision. He was like,
God wants Humperdoo, not Jesus, ever.
He's like, I'm sorry, Jesus, but he doesn't want you ever. And it was like, oh, that's so sad. And he looked so crestfallen, like, oh, I was really hoping that this would work, kind of thing.
So he's really depressed. Star's really depressed because they've killed the clone and they haven't found the other one. And Jesus isn't going to be an alternative, because obviously God knows about the clone anyway. So he's thinking, well, my life's miserable. And we saw him in the room, didn't we?
Yeah.
And he was like naked with his tap, and this tap. It's basically just all you can see is this tap, couldn't you?
Yep.
And he had a sash on, his sash from when he was always winning everything, and he was getting absolutely drunk.
Yeah.
And he decided he was going to kill himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't work, did it? Because he fell down. He didn't tighten it properly, and he landed on the floor.
Oh, everything went wrong because and this was horrible to watch, because he tried, like you say, to hang himself, and then when he did it, like the leg fell off, and then the sash got caught in, like, he's got like nipple chains, got caught in that.
Yeah.
Whipped that out. Oh, that was so horrible. And then it all like collapsed, and he fell on the floor, and he was just laid there in a heap, just like one leg, and like his nipples ripped off, and he was just crying and sobbing like a a really sort of pathetic individual there on the floor.
He looked awful, didn't it?
Oh my God, that was horrible, that bit.
And the next thing, God was in the room.
Yeah.
And he's told him, he knew where the Messiah was, and he told Star he had to go and get him.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no.
Yeah, because didn't he say he knew where he'd been all along, and he said all you had to do was ask.
Yes.
And then he said something about God helps those who help themselves or something.
Yeah.
And it's basically like, you'll get what you want. Is his name Klaus? I think his name's Klaus, isn't it? And he said, you'll get what you want. Yeah. You will get what you want, Klaus, once you've completed this for me. So all you need to do is go to this place and recover my child.
So the next thing you know, there's Star and Feathers. I think they arrived in a helicopter, didn't they?
Yeah.
Near where the camp was, where Tulip and Cass were, and she just made them, because she's obviously a bad cook, because they've obviously referred to this many times over the time, that she's rubbish.
Yeah.
And she'd made them some food. Oh no, it's awful. So she made them some food, and Humperdoo started projectile vomiting, and then so did Cass, and then we saw outside the window there was it was called a sonic nauseator.
Yeah, it was like a big satellite dish, wasn't it? It was horrible.
It's awful. So Tulip realised what had happened, and she said, Humperdoo, go to the moon.
Yeah.
And he ran outside and got in that thing.
Mm-hmm.
And she had because basically what was going to happen is she was going to explode that, so that would kill everybody.
Yeah.
And Cass wouldn't let her. They were fighting over it, weren't they? She whacked him with an axe in the end and took control of the thing. And then he was in his rocket. I think, I don't know if it didn't work or she couldn't do it, but he was just going, no.
Well, I
think she sort of felt sorry for him.
I wonder whether it was something to do with the batteries, because there was a little bit earlier on where they were on about the batteries needed changing or something. So I'm wondering whether Cassidy didn't change the batteries again, because like you said, because you had this whole commotion where he went outside, the Featherstone burst in, there was a scuffle, Tulip was sick, Cassidy slipped in Tulip's vomit, there was they all just went flying, got knocked to the ground, then they all got out there and airlifted Humperdoo up into the air, and she was trying to then flick the switch, but it wasn't working. So I reckon it was, they never really explained.
He probably jeopardised it, didn't he?
Yeah.
But it did look like she didn't know what to do. It's like, I want to do it, because he looked so pathetic, didn't he? Like going, and all this weird voice he puts on. I can't do it, only you can do that. Yeah, so it's like, and then obviously he had the axe in him, and they went, so they basically took him, didn't they?
And it was so funny.
The two of them was just sat there, it's like,
and then she's like, I'm really sorry I did that. And he's like, sure, no, I understand, and all this lot. And he was like, you did what you had to do, kind of thing. And then they were like, we okay? Yeah, we're fine. And he was like, it's going to hurt to...
Because it's so different to get out. It's going to hurt to pull this thing out.
Yeah. But then they were like...
The two of them just sat on the floor.
We need to go and get our guy back.
So then we nipped back to the outback.
Yes.
And we saw, obviously, Jesse had got out of his grave and he's walking along and he spotted a camper van.
Yes, coming over in the distance, yeah. And it was God, wasn't it?
God stopped, got out to speak to him.
Yeah.
And I did put you to speak a little bit there, but he was saying that he refused. He refused. Because he refused, and he passed the test or something.
Yeah, and he said they tried everything.
Because I didn't like any false gods and all that sort of thing you have with the religion. It's like, I passed then because I refused. You know, he was so proud of himself, like, you didn't really want me to do that, did you? And then God said he did.
And he hugged him.
He said, you came so close.
Yeah, because he hugged him, and God was like, I know you did and stuff. And he was like, I never turned my back on you. I never betrayed you or anything. He said, they tried everything. And he was like, I know. And he was like stroking his hair and stuff. And then that's when he turned and said, but you thought about it, didn't you?
Yeah, because the fact that he had thought about it, that was his downfall. And then he moved in and bit his eye out.
Oh, that was horrible, that bit.
That was gross.
We were like, what the hell's going on? Why did God just chomp into Jesse's eyeball and pull it out? And then you had that image of God. Again, it was another image I thought.
Well, because you know the saying, like, if your hand makes you sin, cut it off.
Yeah.
So basically, because he looked at the throne and thought about it, That's why he bit his eye out.
Yeah, but it's the fact that he bit it out that was there.
Well,
and the fact that his
it just
beard was
comes in
all
keeping
covered
with
in
the Bible, I
blood, and
suppose.
his had a bloody beard and everything stood there. And then,
and he said to him, he said, "You still have a little part to play in this apocalypse.
yeah,
And don't forget to bring your friends."
yeah. So he basically
And then just walked away and left him there.
He explained the reason. He was like, you've been brought back for a purpose, and although this is all still happening, you and your friends need to be a part of this. So it's like, okay, so it's all still part of God's plan. And then, yeah, like you said, he just left Jesse there in the middle of the desert with one eye, and oh yeah, that was horrible.
and then we had this really weird bit because we had All Father, which is Star with hair,
and
there was Jesus, and there was Humperdoo, and there was Hitler, and there was a crowd, and there was a fanfare, and it's like, hang on, what's going on? Because obviously they've got him back. Star looks beautiful again.
Yeah, he got all of his looks and stuff back.
All his looks back, and they were all there to sort of praise and welcome the Messiah.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, where's this going?
And he says that...
And then we nip back to...
He said, no, and then he said he did his great announcement, and he said, everything is back on track, and he said, and I am happy to announce that we have an official air date for the apocalypse, and everybody's like, hooray, all cheering and celebrating. And then we cut from there, and we go to that place again, that bar.
We go to Tulip and Cass at the hotel again.
Yeah, back in the saga.
We see the bit we saw right at the beginning of the series.
Yes.
This season.
Uh-huh.
They're in the hotel, sitting on the bed. The joke about the Guinness. That's what we saw, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then they all got cozy because obviously she kissed him, and then obviously they thought, they carried on and enjoyed themselves.
Yeah. And as that was going on, you heard a flamenco guitar. And you cut to a prison in Australia, and there was a guy playing the guitar, and then these two other guys came up and just killed him, just like stabbed him loads and loads. And then they said something about that's what you get for messing with him, or that's what you shouldn't have done what you did, or something. And they walk off to the left of the screen, and as they walk off to the right of the screen, on walks Eugene, and he walks over to this man, and he looks down at him, and he goes, huh. And he grabs the guitar and he goes and sits down and he just starts tinkering on the guitar. And you go,
yeah.
So did those guys kill that guy because he was mean to Eugene?
Or did they kill him because they were New Zealand and he was Australian New Zealand thing?
It could have been that as well. Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah.
And then he just sat down and just started tinkering with the guitar. And then it goes back to Tulip and Cassidy.
Back to the hotel.
And they're clearly...
just sort of getting up from their liaison and stuff.
And there's a knocking on the door.
Knock on the door. And they open it, and there's Jesse.
Yeah.
It's like, no!
And Cassidy just laughed, and that was kind of how it ended.
How it ended, yeah.
So it's like, so they're all reunited and everything, and it was, oh, man. Because that's the other thing as well now with Jesse. In the opening credits and stuff, you kept getting these scenes of him with an eye patch. And you're like, why is he wearing an eye patch? And now we know.
Now we know why.
So it's quite good that they gave us all these things throughout the course of the series. Like you said, in the very first episode, with that bit with Cassidy with blonde hair, them sat in the hotel room together, and, Jesse with an eye patch in the credits, with Jesse falling out of a plane, and they didn't get the payoff of these things until further on throughout the course of the season. So it was very well done. But yeah, it was a really, really good episode.
Going into the next episode.
Yes.
So we obviously started where we finished, and the two of them are sitting on the bed talking, and they weren't going to tell him about what happened. They're feeling really guilty. And then she goes and tells him.
Yeah, because he was in the bathroom, and he was like...
Yeah.
Because this episode
freshening up a bit, wasn't he?
This episode was called Overture. And he was in the bathroom cleaning up and sort of cleaning his... Oh, it's horrible when they showed the socket.
Yeah.
Ooh. Like that. Yeah. Ooh. Didn't like that. So he was cleaning up, and while he was cleaning up, they were on the bed sort of talking about what happened and saying about him being back and not knowing how to approach it and whether not to tell him or whether to tell him and this, that and the other. And then they just
decided they weren't going to tell him.
Yeah.
and then when he came back in the room, she went, we slept together.
And he just...
Cass's face was like...
He just sort of stood there and went, okay.
Did he say something like, I wasn't here though, but I'm back now?
Yeah.
And looked at Kaz as if to say, so we did it, but I'm back now.
Yeah, it was almost
like she's my girl again now.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly what
you had your moment, but you're not going to get it again, sort of thing.
Me and Zoe got that too, of the fact that it was one of those, right, well, that happened. I'm not going to be mad because I'm dead, but I'm back now, so therefore that happened then. It's never going to happen again. You know, that's the end of that. And very interesting.
Well, they basically filled him in about what had happened and the fact that about the Humperdoo thing and all that.
Yeah.
And again, he also agreed that he had to kill him, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
It's like Kaz still looks like, oh, I don't want to kill him.
Yeah, because didn't he say that God will never let you take him?
Yeah.
God will never, he's God's chosen.
No, because he said, let's go and rescue him, or something, Kaz said. And then when Kaz walked out, he goes, we're not rescuing him, we're killing him. Kaz still thinks he's rescuing him because he thinks, I don't want him to die. But he's got the same page. He's on the same page as Tulip, isn't he?
Yeah.
Saying, we are killing him. And after what happened, he definitely wants to kill him now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, so obviously that's what their plan is, off to go and get the Humperdoo.
Yeah.
And then we went back to Masada, and we could see, well, half-naked Humperdoo being bathed and pruned, and the crowd went wild when he came out. Yeah, and then that was a bit with Jesus and Humperdoo.
Oh, yeah, because you had, like, Star greeted Humperdoo, and they gave him this big reception. There was a little man as well, like a man came running up to him to try and touch him, and Featherstone just kind of...
Yeah, he was, heal me, and he was touching him, and then they beat him up. And then he was probably worse off than he was before he went towards him.
And then he was over looking at some cakes, and Jesus came up behind him and to give him a hug. And you knew straight away, we knew exactly what was going to happen here, because he had these two little pink cupcakes in either hand. Jesus comes around and goes, my child. And Humperdoo turns around and goes, and Jesus hugs him. And then Jesus backs away, turns around, and you just see the back of Jesus, and everybody's laughing, and they're all like wanting to take pictures. And Jesus looks down, and you can see he's got these pink frosting like nipples on the outside of his tunic. And then then it was sad again, because then somebody wanted a photograph, and he's like, oh sure. And then they were like, no, can you take the picture? And he was like, oh, you want me to? Oh, okay. And then he like looked over, and Hitler was just sat there looking at him, and Jesus had this sort of look on his face of like, like it's so sad again. It's just kind of like, no, don't want you in the picture, Jesus. You know, you want you to take the picture, not be in the picture.
Yeah,
it was that interesting little look between the two of them, as if to say, see, you need to consider my thought process, Jesus, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, because it was like a big theatre. There was going to be a massive show, wasn't it, going to happen?
Yeah, they were on about
God was obviously there as well.
And there was all these acts lined up. They were going to have like an hour-long special, which was going to be the like countdown to the apocalypse, and they were going to have singers and jugglers and mime artists and all of this kind of stuff, and it was going to be a big spectacular celebration. And then obviously Humperdoo would come out, and there was like a bit with him looking at his sparkly shoes, and he was like looking at these shoes he was going to dance in and stuff. And like you said, God was there as well.
Then we had a little bit which was weird, because I didn't know what I thought about it afterwards. Because you remember when he was in the desert with the saint, obviously the saint wants to kill God.
Yeah.
And Jesse wants God dead now as well. So obviously he knows if he uses Genesis, the saint will appear.
Yeah.
So he's because he did that before God had turned up as well, didn't he?
Yeah.
Or was that just after?
No.
He shouted to somebody.
It was in this episode. Like, I think it was shortly after he'd spoken to them two, we saw him outside shouting into the desert, and then we saw him again doing that. And so it was clearly him. Again, you probably got the same thing as us, of like, oh, he's trying to call the saint. He's trying to summon the saint.
Because that's the only way he knows where he is, because he once he uses Genesis, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So they went back to, because they were in that place. The little man that ran the bar was piling all the bodies, because obviously the demon and the angel had that fight.
And they were still going at
it. They were still fighting, and there was bodies everywhere. And was it in the? I think it was in the. While they were in there, they saw this thing came up on the. It was a morning show, like a breakfast TV type thing about.
It was that same breakfast TV show we saw in the other episode, and some guy just walks in and shoots one of the presenters in the head.
Yeah, people got shot, didn't they?
And then it cut from there to that police officer. that we saw. So the policeman that we saw the other week that was actually working with Hoover 2, we saw him and he's like watching this on the TV, and then it just suddenly changed and it was like a public service announcement thing about the
Apocalypse 2020 or whatever it was.
Yeah, and he kept
it was the Apocalypse Review,
and it was on every single channel, and he's like, "What the hell is this?"
With a beautiful star.
Yeah, and then the police officer sort of went, "Star." Like, oh no, sort of thing.
Because didn't he say in the announcement, he said about once we have Humperdoo will dance his heart off, and that will be the start of the apocalypse.
And all of the people that are, the good people will be saved, and all of those, the non-righteous people will be punished. And that's, and he said, and we're going to go out in a spectacular fashion and stuff. And that's when obviously it jumped from that back to the bar. And they were on about their plan. And then they said something about their ride, how they were going to get in or something. And they said about, oh, is that our ride? And then you saw the devil and the demon and the angel. And the angel looked up and said, what did he say? Something like, oh, is it time then? Or are you ready then? Or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And then that was that.
And then they transported them, didn't they? They flew them there.
Into that cell that Cassidy and the angel were in the first place. Yeah. They came in through the ceiling.
Now, what I got confused about before they left it, because they were going to leave them to it, because they were coming with them. The angel touched Jesse.
Yeah.
And says, look after our child.
Yeah, while he had his hand on his shoulder, she put her hand on Jesse's stomach. And then you go, oh, they're the parents of Genesis.
Yeah.
They are Genesis's parents. A demon and an angel are the parents of this being that is inside Jesse's body. So that was very, very interesting, the fact that we got that moment.
So then we went back to Masada, and Hitler said he wanted to speak to God, and he said he had something to show him.
It wasn't Hitler, it was Jesus. Basically, Humperdoo was sat in this room getting his hair done and stuff. And then there was a knock on the door, and God went over and opened this little vent. And Jesus was out there, and he had a bunch of flowers, and he wanted to come wish them the best. And he's like, Jesus, and he's like, Father, and then he's like, what do you want? And he's like, oh, I just wanted to come and see. And he's like hoping that he'd be let in. And God was like, okay. And he's like, I brought you something. And he's like, okay. And then he said, here. And then he obviously had the flower, and it was all really awkward. And then he started shoving the flowers.
Try to push the roses through the.
And God pulled them through,
thing.
But then they all came off, and he just was left with the stems. And it was like, oh. And then he's like, was there anything else? And he's like, we're really busy.
And he said he was going to say no, and then Hitler was there, and he was sort of like, come on. And he put the music on, and then Jesus started doing his dance moves to God.
Yeah.
To no avail, because he still did. He just shut the hatch. He
just looked at him, didn't he? And he just went, okay. And then he just shut the hatch, and that was it. And it was like, oh. And then Hitler and Jesus again looked at each other like as if, it doesn't matter what you do, and he's not gonna accept. He's
not gonna waver from it.
No, he's not. You're not the one he wants. And what was it again? Just a little sidebar here was, interestingly enough, the fact that the portrayal of God in this show is so interesting, because you get all this stuff if as a religious person or whatever, you have this whole thing of God, in the olden days, God was a vengeful God that smote people and brought all of this wreck and ruin onto people to punish them. And then the New Testament changes, and God is a loving, benevolent God. We are all his children and stuff like that. And God forgives everybody's transgressions. Not in this program. God does not, Jesus made that one mistake, as he said, he gave into his humanity and he slept with a woman. And after that was it. God was done with him. He's like, you failed me. You've let me down. And nothing he's ever done ever since. God has never forgiven him.
No. He's got no interest in him,
and it's just really, you just feel so sorry for Jesus. You're just like, this is so sad that, one thing you did and God just can't get past that.
No. And we had when he went back in the room, Humperdoo was getting his hair done, and obviously the woman was probably sick of him anyway.
Yeah.
And he sort of went, ow, and goes, did that hurt? Oh, sorry, did I hurt you? And the next thing, God chucked her across the room.
And embedded her in the wall.
As if to say, yes, he could tell she meant, he obviously can read our minds, so he knew she had actually done it deliberately. So then, it was a lot of chopping and changing this little bit.
Was a lot.
So we had the three of them appeared, ready to fight. It was a great fight scene with all those white coat guys, wasn't there? Between the three of them.
Just cutting between them all, like punching them and knocking them down and stuff.
And when they finished the fight, they realised Cass had gone missing.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like, where's Cass? Where's Cass? And then they went again back to something else, and we had Eugene at the prison playing the guitar now.
Yeah.
And he got told he had it was like a minister, wasn't it? You know, like a vicar for the prison.
Yeah.
He wasn't a very nice guy at all, was he?
No, he wasn't, no.
And he's going, well, you know, they thought I ate him, and they didn't find him they didn't find Jesse in my poop.
So because of that, they were letting him go. They were going to let him out.
They're going to let him go out of prison. I thought, oh, that's interesting.
And he was talking about God's plan and what God's got planned. And he said, I don't know. He said, I don't even know if God's got a plan for you. He said, what are you? You know, comic relief? A cautionary tale? I don't really know. And as he's saying all this, Eugene sat there and he's just going, rock star. Rock star. That's it. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a rock star. And he has this like little dream moment where he sees himself, you know, rich and famous with girls and fancy cars, and he's like on stage playing the guitar and this, that, and the other, and he's like, yeah, that's what it's going to be. And
yeah, like, that's his dream now. It's like, I got a guitar, I'm going to be a rock star. So go back. Then we went back to Masada, and obviously they'd been looking for Cass.
No. First, they found him, and they ended up in this big room. There was a big room they were in, like a big, like an amphitheater or something. And they're like, where is everybody? And they're like, they could hear all this noise from above, and they looked up, and there was a big stained glass window of Humperdoo, and all the noise was coming from above them. And then Cassidy disappeared again, because then they went, where's he gone now? So he like disappeared for a second time. So that was so they lost him the first time, and then they found him with the big room, and then they lost him again. So when the camera panned away from them and showed us the room and the noise coming from upstairs, where clearly that's where the real show was going on, and we had the opening act of somebody playing an accordion or something, and when it came back down to them, that's when Cassidy had disappeared again. And that was obviously the point where God got him. That was God obviously snatched him at that point when they were distracted.
And he was saying all this stuff about, aren't you tired, boy? And, you know, wouldn't you like to like end this living forever? Sort of all the cycle, basically.
Yeah.
And then he had this sort of like flashback where he'd gone home with Billy.
Yeah, it was
back to that house,
back in the past, wasn't it?
Granny B and all the people. And it's like, I can give you a second chance. He was giving him a vision of like this, you can have a second chance.
And then the sun comes up, and he looks at his hand, and he realizes the sun's not burning his skin. And it's like, oh, this is his deepest desire. And then it's really, really happy. And then, like it goes back to God, and he's like, you could have all of that. You could have a second chance. You could have the girl that you love. You could have everything. All you've got to do is one thing.
Yeah. But at the time we're thinking, what does he have to do then to find on?
Yeah.
So we didn't see any more for that. We had a bit with Jessie and Tulip having a chat.
And she told him she read
about the letter. Yeah, about the letter. And the shit about burning it. And saying, sorry, I got annoyed. I burnt it I burnt a church down.
What was the thing she asked him? What did she say? What does perpetuity mean?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, it's like forever. And she was like, oh, okay. And then he said something about, that's when he said something about checking the letter again. She went, I can't. I burnt it. What did you burn it for? I had to burn down a church. And he's like, oh, all right. Okay, then. Then it cut from there to Star and Featherstone.
Yeah, the show was going on while Star and the woman were having a little liaison.
It was so funny. They stood in the corridor talking, and he's so happy about how everything's going now. And she's like, we did it, sir. We did it. And he's like, yes, we sure did. And then he's looking at her, and he's like, you certainly are a handsome woman, Flufferman, because he calls her Flufferman for some reason. And he's like, you are a handsome woman, Flufferman. And as the camera pans out, you see that he's like got his hands on her boobs. He just stood there, just like groping her, and she's just stood with her arms by her sides like a soldier. And he's like, yes, there's certainly something about you. And then he's like, we should celebrate. And she's like, we should. And it's all really awkward and stilted.
And then we found them, and then we see them afterwards. They're both in the bed.
And he's laid there like half naked. And she's got the covers pulled up to her chin. Right up.
Yeah.
And he's like going, oh, that was wonderful. And she was like, you certainly seem like you needed that or something, or you were ready for that. And he was like, oh, I certainly was. And then you get the sense that it was very brief, whatever happened. And she's like, well, you know, we've probably got time before the show ends if you wanted to go again. And he's like, no. He said, we'll have plenty of time afterwards. And then she went, afterwards? And then he said, yes. And then she was like, I was under the impression there would be no afterwards. And he went, oh, no. He said, the plan has changed slightly. And then he said about Hoover 2 had all of the information and that he was supposed to communicate it to certain places in the world, that certain people were going to be spared from the apocalypse. And the word had to be put out there. And then she went, like, it was like an oh shit kind of moment, because obviously she killed Hoover 2. And then that was when it was revealed the fact that he needed then to desperately try and sort out this plan. And she got out of the bed, and then you saw she was wearing her suit. And then he said something about her cleaning herself up or something about what she really... And then she's like confused, and she was like, sir, she said, but I thought we were all going to die in a, glorious blaze, and then we were going to go to heaven, and we were going to get our just rewards in the afterlife. And he was like, oh, you didn't really believe all of that rubbish, did you? And she's like, why did you do all of this? And he's like, cruelty, dirty sex, power. Why would anyone else do all of these things? And she was becoming very disillusioned, and you could see her eyes tearing up and thinking, I did this for like religious reason. The reason I'm in the Grail is because she thought it was real, yeah. All of this religious side. Clearly she's like a religious fanatic, and she's like, her idol, the leader of this organization, doesn't even really care about all of that stuff. And it was a real moment. And then you go, oh, this is interesting, because now if she's now seeing him in a different light, what's that going to mean for the finale? And then as the camera, he said, clean yourself up. And the camera zoomed out. You can say what she had on.
Well, basically she had a strap on, but it was like an arm with a fist. I thought, oh dear, that's so wrong.
So clearly that's why she was fully clothed.
In keeping with this program, it's so wrong.
And that's why she was fully...
She didn't need to take her clothes off.
Yeah, because she had sex with him, not the other way round. So... Oh,
never fails to shock us, this program.
No.
Yeah, so then we had Jessie and Julep were in a lift, and the lift broke.
Yeah.
And she said she'd get out through a vent and then get him out when she got... Once I get out, I'll open the door for you. So she got out the lift, but when she got out, God was waiting for her, wasn't he? It's like, oh no.
Yeah, he was like, come on, come out. Come on, you can come out. Like as if, I'm not going to do anything to you. And there was a little bit as well. There was a little funny bit just before that where we got another moment of God trying to convince Cassidy to do whatever he wanted. And he's like, but why are you trying to destroy everything? He's like trying to talk him out of the apocalypse. And he's like, what? Look at what humanity's done. Look what I did. And look what they made of the world and all of the travel. And he's like, yeah, but what about all the good stuff? And he's like, what about Italian food? Or Paul Newman? Season 2 of The Love Boat. All of these, he's like, there's all these good things that humanity's done, but God wasn't having any of it. And he was just basically like, will you accept my proposal? And then that's when, we got the lift bit. And
the proposal, we knew what the proposal was then, is because he said he had to protect Humperdoo.
No matter what it took.
To ensure the apocalypse happens.
Yeah.
So basically, if he did that, he'd give him his second chance. So that was that. We also had Hitler.
Jesus.
Getting very, very angry and he definitely wants to kill them all, doesn't he? God and Humperdoo now.
Yeah, and they were drinking, weren't they? They were having a drinking conversation. And as you said, Hitler's just had enough with it all now, and he just wants it all over and done with and all of this stuff, and he's trying to convince Jesus that, there's only one way to resolve all this, and Jesus is like, I'm not doing that. I'm not killing anybody. And he's like, you don't have to. Like basically like, I'll do it. You just have to be complicit.
It's almost like you set it all up and then I can do it, sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, what's he going to do?
And we may as well stick with that for a minute, because we did cut away from there. And when we came back to it, Jesus was like passed out on the bed and Hitler was clearly going to leave. But then Jesus got up and like tried to stop him. And then you got the reveal of why Hitler has actually been going, like being pally with Jesus all along. And he
questioned his motives, didn't he?
Yeah, and he basically said, because, I'd prefer to have you as the Messiah, as my, my antagonist, because you're weak. you're soft. He said the Christ child, he said, is divine. He is spiritual. He might be an idiot, but he is very, very holy. Whereas you, look at you, you're a failure. What kind of resistance would you put up against me? And then he pushed him.
Yeah.
And then Jesus pushed him back. And then they clearly got into a brawl, but it kind of cut away again from that. We didn't get to see them have a fight, but they clearly got into a fight. Jesus
some sort of fight, didn't they?
Jesus has finally had enough of all of this, that he finally snapped and decided to get a fight with Hitler. Then we cut to God and Tulip. And
Tulip, yes. He took her in an office room or something, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And basically, he said to her, I'm going to put this timer on for a minute.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee I will get you so angry that you want to punch me or fight me.
And if you don't, because that's right. Before that, he had said to her, I'm really surprised with this. And she's like, with what? And he's like, no resistance. And she's like, well, and then he's like, I'm disappointed. I was hoping for a fight. He's like, he wanted a fight. And then he was doing the thing. Do you remember was it not the last season or the season before? But the point where she met him that time, and he was saying about how impulsive she was. And when you remember that time when she died and she was in her own afterlife thing, and it was like,
that was when he was in the dog costume on that motorbike thing.
And he was basically saying about how you always mess things up, O'Hare. You're always, because the father in the weird purgatory thing she was stuck in, the dad basically kept taunting her with you never get anything right. You always mess everything up. You're always too impulsive. Yeah. And then he brought that up in this conversation, and he was like, you're impulsive, O'Hare. You always get things wrong. You'll mess it up just like you do with everything. And it's like, that was again a nice little, if you're paying attention to things in this show, that was a nice little connective tissue back to when that had been said to her previously. And then she was that resolve of not this time. Not this time I'm not going to. This time I'm not going to fail. So he sets this little egg timer, and then he was trying to taunt her by calling her names and stuff.
Oh, and then he brought up Dallas and the baby. Because obviously he said about because he did it. He made sure she couldn't have keep the baby and all this stuff.
And then he said,
and she just
the reason why. And he said, do you want to know why? Do you want to know why that happened? Why it was part of my divine plan? And she sort of trying to keep it together. You could see she was twitching,
flinching a little bit.
And then he just went, I honestly can't remember. It really wasn't that important, and then that was the bit that she just then flipped.
She went at him then, didn't she?
And she fired the gun.
And just as she
bang,
did,
bang, 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 bang.
And it didn't do anything. And it right in his face, and his head, nothing happened. And then all of a sudden, the alarm went off.
Yeah, she was literally seconds away. Because that was the other thing. He had said to her, if you can do it for a minute, I'll call this all off. I'll call it all off. I'll let everyone go. There won't be an apocalypse. You'll have saved everybody. And she was literally seconds away from that happening. But because of how flippant he was about I made you lose your baby and I can't even remember why, because it wasn't that important to me. That was the point that tipped her over the edge.
Awful.
And then he just
and then he
hit her and flung her across the room, didn't he?
Across the room, yeah. So then obviously Jesse managed to get out the lift.
Oh,
and he came across a very disemboweled Kaz on the floor.
It was horrible. There were pieces of him everywhere.
I know, all his guts were hanging out, and he tried to get me to do what he wanted, but I told him I wouldn't do it. And he kept at me, and I kept saying I wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
And then he said...
And then he's like, I'm weak. I'm really weak. And Jesse's like, no, you're not. He said, look at you. Look at what you did. And he's like, you'll be fine. We'll get you healed. And he's like, oh, Jesse, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, Jesse. And he's like, he kept asking me, and I kept saying no, and I kept saying no. And Jesse's leaning in towards him, and he's like, until I said yes. And then you're like, oh.
And the next thing, Jesse got knocked. Did he get knocked out or something? Yeah,
he got grabbed
hit. Anyway.
God grabbed him with Cassidy's leg.
Yeah. Yeah. And then God was before he knocked him down or something, didn't he? And then he started feeding blood to Cassidy I started worrying. I was thinking, did he just chop up Tulip and turn blood?
Because this is a little bit we missed. When they went into that office room, there was a man sat in there, and God did the same thing. He flung him across the room into the wall, and then he had the whole bit with Tulip, and then he flung her across the room. And then he got up and then he said, oh, well, what did he say? Something like, I suppose the Lord has to work again or something. And he broke a pair of scissors in half and he went over and he started
We could just see the
carving up
slashing.
something. And then the next thing after that bit with Jesse, he had a big bucket and he congratulated Cassidy. And then he said about you need to get your strength back. And he poured this blood over Cassidy to
all into his mouth and that.
And yeah,
but I don't.
We were thinking it was Tulip that he had cut up. It was like, what kind of cruel irony would that be? That the woman he loves is the woman that ended up being the thing that saves him, and he's done God's bidding. But then, what's his reward at the end of it when Tulip's dead, sort of thing? So now God and Jesse are left sort of together again.
Yes, and then we had a little bit of a Eugene moment where he was free and he was going to be a rock star and he was playing his guitar
and he starts singing
and the next
closing time, and then what was it, something careered out of control, like a van or something.
And it ran him over and all you could see his feet. So is that at the end of him now?
I presume so. I mean, we can only hope that in the finale we might see him and he'll be in heaven this time. But maybe he'll be in heaven and he'll be
finally got free and felt happy about himself, and that was the end of him.
Now, what's interesting? Little interesting sidebar here. Anybody that's familiar with the Preacher comics is they actually did like a limited edition Eugene story. So this is what they used a little bit in this episode, was that in this story Eugene does become a rock star. Eugene goes off and becomes a rock star, but he records this song, and I think it's whether it's because of the way he is or something, but the song that he records is a massive hit, but it causes like a rash of like suicides all over the world. So it causes everybody to kill themselves and things, this song. So I think that's what they were referencing.
Maybe that guy had a heart attack at the car.
Oh, because he was singing. Yeah, oh, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe he'll slide out again. He might slide out of the car, under the car.
That would be interesting, actually.
If you just said that now, thinking the guy careered out of control, because he wasn't in the middle of a car in the road.
Yeah.
And the car went towards him, so he started singing, the guy crashed into him. So, that would make sense, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
The guy had to commit suicide because of the song.
Yeah. That would be interesting. We'll have to see in the final episode, though, so...
Before we get to the final two pieces, because I'd rather keep those two bits together, we had Star trying to send an override fax, and he couldn't send the fax, and he was like talking to a helpline.
Yeah.
And the guy's going, just turn it on and off again.
Yeah.
And all this stuff. Said, I haven't got time for this. I have to send this urgent, because obviously he knows now that he needs to make sure that not everyone's going to die at the apocalypse, and he's like urgently trying to get a fax sent. So somebody somewhere knows, don't kill everybody. And then we saw Jesse in the church.
Oh, no, there was one other little... We may as well say about this other little tiny scene, was that, obviously, we've established that Tulip wasn't dead, but she was locked in the room. And what was interesting is that she's always, like, they've had a thing in the past where she's never met a lock that she couldn't pick. But she couldn't pick this lock. She kept trying, and she couldn't open it. And then the door opened, and there was white light. And then when it subsided, it was Featherstone.
Oh, yeah, of course it was. I forgot about that bit.
So Featherstone let her out.
Yeah, because obviously she's now disgruntled with what's really going to happen. She's going to, well, like you said, she's going to probably side with them now after all this time when she's been fighting them all.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, he hasn't realised the consequences, has he, old Star? Because he's so happy, he's so beautiful again. And he's not to think that she's going to go and turn against him at any point.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, they got allies. That's the case.
And then we get...
But yeah, then we go to Jesse.
Yeah. And they're sat in a church, and God sat behind him, and he's smoking, and he offers Jesse a cigarette, and Jesse doesn't want it. And he's like, oh, now you choose. Now the time you decide to give up smoking. And he's like, oh, of all the times you could pick. And then he's basically talking to him about all of this and what the point was and stuff. And it's basically that he wants Genesis back. He said, I want what was taken from me. And Jesse's like, what? And it's like, and then you kind of go, is that what all of this has been about? Everything has been about him getting back Genesis. And he's like, this thing is...
Because he questioned why he got it in the first place, didn't he? Saying, why was I given it anyway?
Yeah. And then he was like saying about this thing shouldn't exist. That it's, and then that's when you got the confirmation. He was like, that basically it was a, two entity, like an angel and a demon had a baby, and this thing shouldn't exist. It's a stain on both heaven and hell. It's something.
Maybe that's why Jesus gave him that angel a weird look the other week.
Maybe, yeah.
Because he knows that he did that.
And what was very interesting about this bit was the fact he wanted it back, and he tried using his voice, the voice of God, on Jesse several times throughout this scene, and it didn't work, did it?
No.
The word of the Lord didn't work on Jesse, and then Jesse starts getting, and then God was like throwing him around the room and throwing him through the pews and battering him around because he was getting angry because Jesse wouldn't give him what he wanted. And he's like, wait, you can't take it yourself, can you? You need me to give it up to you.
Yeah.
And it's like, and he's like, you're afraid because this power rivals or maybe is stronger than your power.
Yeah.
And that's really what the problem is here. And then he starts smirking and he's kind of like, I've got you, you son of a bitch. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I
didn't
finally
he use
realized...
it? He used it on God. He said something to God, didn't he, innit?
No.
It didn't make any difference.
He didn't. No, God...
And then...
God kept trying to bait him into using it. God kept saying, use it on me and see what happens. See if you can use it on me. And he kept going, and he went, and then he sort of stopped himself.
Didn't. Yeah,
and he
yeah.
kept, resisting and resisting. And then instead, he called outwards to somebody or something.
That's right.
Else.
He shouted out the Genesis, not at God, but he said something, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then
we got a shot of the desert and we saw crows. And I said to Zoe, I was like, I know what that means. You know what those crows signify. Yeah. And then, yes, he cut back to them and he's still taunting Jesse and stuff. And Jesse's just smirking and laughing at him. And then the doors burst open. And there was the Saint of Killers.
Yes. And then, ironically, God was going, hello, my dear friend.
Hello, William.
And he's saying, I haven't seen you for ages. And then we got a bit of more of, well, was that like God? Was it him remembering it all again?
What was weird about this bit was you got a flashback. You got a weird flashback where God was stood like in the desert, like in the wilderness, and the saint had his gun and he was pointing the gun at God, and God was looking at him. And then you saw God was holding the saint's daughter's doll.
Toy, doll.
And then you saw him remember the moment we've seen before where he went back to his home and all the crows were eating his wife and his daughter. And you see the doll on the floor, and then you see him there again, and the doll's in his pocket.
Yep.
And then it flashes back to the real, like the present time, and God turns to Jesse, and he's like, "Oh, you've got this all wrong. He's not here to kill me." And he's like, he looks and he steps aside and goes, "Are you, William?" And then he goes, He's here for you, preacher.
He's come for you." And I thought, what a twist!
Yeah.
Because he's always told Jesse he's going to kill God.
Yeah.
So he obviously needed Jesse to be there. Because I'm confused.
So now what I'm wondering is, my thing here is that does he need, because the saint is supernatural, so God can't take Genesis out of Jesse.
No.
The saint is supernatural. He's not, he's like a demon, he's a saint, whatever he is. He's an otherworldly being. And, he's got power to kill otherworldly beings. He could kill God. He killed the devil. We saw that. So I wonder whether the thing is here that he needed Jesse to come to Masada because he knew that Jesse was going to do that. He was going to bring the saint. But what Jesse didn't know was that the saint was going to turn on him and was actually going to be working for God, which would mean he'll shoot Jesse, which will kill Jesse and release Genesis. Because although Jesse, because like Zoe said this at the time.
Oh, so God has to be there, doesn't he? Because obviously once he does it, it'll then, like you see where they release a demon out of people.
Yeah.
The smoky stuff comes out. It'll then go into God, won't it?
Or God will be able to capture
couldn't kill them. Yeah, because at that time when he said to him before, so why hadn't you killed me before? He said, because I don't want to kill you.
Yeah. But it's
because
also
he can't kill him. Basically, he can't kill him yet because he needs to kill him when he's in the vicinity of God so God can get Genesis back.
Yeah, and also the fact that although, because Zoe said that at the time, she said to me, but Jesse died once and it didn't release it. And it's like, yeah, but he died like in a normal way. Like, I know he fell out of an airplane. That's not how everyone dies. But like he died in a conventional way. Whereas this time he's potentially going to be killed by a supernatural being with a supernatural bullet. Which will, do you know what I mean? It's like that's different. It's a different sort of death. which would then potentially unleash Genesis back out of his body. So then it's like, well, that's what all this was about. Because the way he died before, it meant that he didn't relinquish Genesis, which is why then God brought him back from the dead, because he knows that there's only one way that Genesis can be relinquished from Jesse's body.
Has to be, killed. Has to be, that the saint has to do it, basically, doesn't he? Yeah.
I can't wait until the finale. I can't wait. I don't know what length it is, but I'm hoping it's slightly longer, because there's just so many things that they need to.
It's a lot of tie-ups.
I mean, there was one other little thing we didn't talk about, which was Cassidy clearly healed himself very quickly, because we got a little shot of him sat in the room with Humperdoo, and Humperdoo was like doing something, and he was yeah, that's great. He was like, you look great, mate. And he was like, oh, I'm really happy for you. Nothing's going to happen to you. Don't worry. So we had that little moment as well to show Cassidy's back on his feet again, or that Cassidy has feet again. But yeah, you've got all these elements. There's so many story points that in 45 minutes. Because
obviously Jesus and Hitler, their issues with everything that's going on, Featherstone, obviously our trio. It's like, oh, what's going to go on?
So there's a lot of things for them to cover in like a normal 45, 50-minute episode. So I'm hoping that it's going to be slightly longer. And I just hope it goes out with a bang. I just hope, this is one of the few shows that we watch that has been consistently good every season. I don't think there's ever really been a duff episode.
No, we've never had a that wasn't a very good episode. No,
so I just hope that
so got to tie up right.
I just hope that we don't get let down with the ending. Like we've so many shows over the years where they just don't seem to get the ending right. And you go, all the years that I enjoyed watching this show, and they screwed it right up at the end. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen, but there's part of me that's like, oh, I really hope that doesn't happen. I really hope that we go out on a good ending, We
will see next week.
We will see next week.
Because we've also got the finale of Fear the Walking Dead next week.
We do, yeah. So 2 finales on next week's episode, folks.
And that's all.
Yes. So there we go. So if you've enjoyed today's show, please let us know that by hitting that thumbs up button and leaving us a like. And also leave us your comments down below. We'd love to know what you think on all these things, and also your questions and your theories and your reactions would be fantastic. And also subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. We would love to have you join us and join me in this kingdom of geeks that I'm building. And make that leap to pledge allegiance. Also check out the description box for the link to my Twitter, so you can come and follow me on there, and also my donation mediums if you should feel generous enough to help support the future of the podcast and the future growth of the channel to allow me to do bigger and better things, get better equipment, etc., etc. Then there are 2 options there for you to choose from. You're not under any obligation to do so, but it would be lovely if maybe you did. And that will do us. So
it will.
Thank you very much, Mother. Thank you very much for joining me.
Yes, I just hope our listeners enjoy this bumper week.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there's so much more exciting stuff coming in October.
Oh yes, we've already looked ahead at what our schedule is going to be, and
Stay tuned.
Lots of stuff on the horizon for you guys.
Aye.
So with that being said, we will wish you goodbye, and say take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye.